Hello, everybody. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in Invincible as Sukuna, the Honored King? Part 4. If you enjoy this type of content, please give the like button a click. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. Let's dive into the rise of the Honored King without further ado. The abandoned construction site offered a semblance of privacy, the skeletal framework of unfinished buildings providing cover from prying eyes. Yet even here, amidst the concrete and twisted metal, Sukuna couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The GDA's surveillance network was comprehensive, and he had little doubt that Cecil Stedman was monitoring his every move. For now, however, the immediate priority was Arama. As they sat in the familiar alcove of the unfinished basement, Sukuna activated his communicator, accessing a secure GDA database with the skills he had acquired over the past few months. "I need to create a background for you," he explained, his fingers flying across the touchscreen. "Something that will allow you to exist in this world without drawing unwanted attention." Arama watched him with quiet curiosity, her head tilted slightly as she observed this display of modern technology. "What are you doing, Sukuna-sama?" "Fabricating a new identity," he replied, his attention focused on the screen. "This world, just like the modern world we both woke into in our previous world, relies heavily on documentation, birth certificates, social security numbers, driver's licenses. Without these, you'll be an anomaly, easily detected by authorities." He located a suitable candidate in the database, a woman who had died in infancy, leaving behind a clean slate with no existing records. "This will do," he murmured, downloading the information and preparing to alter it to fit Arama's needs. "Is that permitted?" Arama asked, a hint of concern entering her voice. "Will it not bring unwanted attention from those in power?" Sukuna's lips curved into a sardonic smile. "I don't ask for permission, Arama. I simply take what is needed. And as for attention, that is easily managed." He spent the next hour meticulously crafting Arama's new identity, drawing on his knowledge of human systems and his acquired hacking skills to create a persona that was both believable and untraceable. Date of birth, social security number, educational records, employment history, all were carefully fabricated and inserted into the appropriate databases, creating a digital footprint that would withstand casual scrutiny. "There," he said finally, leaning back with satisfaction. "You are now Tsukumo Aoi, a freelance chef with a passion for traditional Japanese cuisine. You have a small apartment in the city center, a clean criminal record, and a history of paying your taxes on time." He turned the tablet toward Arama, displaying a photograph he had generated using advanced AI software, a stylized image that captured her likeness while subtly altering her features to align with her new identity. Arama studied the image with detached curiosity. "Aoi Tsukumo," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. "Does this persona please you, Sukuna-sama?" "It's functional," Sukuna replied. "It will allow you to exist without drawing attention. But that's just a tool. What matters is who you truly are, and your loyalty to me." "That will never change," Arama assured him, her eyes meeting his with unwavering devotion. Satisfied, Sukuna closed the tablet and set it aside. "There's still the matter of your cursed energy. It's unlike anything that exists in this world. Its presence will be detectable to those who know what to look for. And you believe there are others who can sense such things?" Arama asked, her expression sharpening. Sukuna nodded. "I do. I can sense them, though they are far from here. It is of no concern to me, however." He paused, considering his options. "For now, you will suppress your cursed energy as much as possible. I will teach you methods to blend it with the background radiation of this world, to make it less noticeable." "I will learn quickly," Arama promised. "I have no doubt," Sukuna replied, a hint of warmth entering his voice. As he began explaining the principles of energy suppression, a new sensation washed over him, a faint but unmistakable trace of divine energy. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but familiar enough to make him pause mid-sentence. "What is it, Sukuna-sama?" Arama asked, sensing the change in his demeanor. "Something unexpected," he murmured, rising to his feet. "A gift, perhaps. From an unlikely source." He closed his eyes, focusing on the source of the energy, a point in the sky directly above them. A connection to heaven, the same force that had prevented him from sacrificing his ability to make binding vows centuries ago. The energy was faint, almost hesitant, but undeniably present. It carried a message, not in words, but in a feeling, an impression. Guidance. Acceptance. Approval. Sukuna opened his eyes, a mixture of surprise and something akin to amusement on his face. "It seems heaven has decided to do a favor for its fallen son," he said to Arama. "What do you mean, Sukuna-sama?" "The new identity I created for you," Sukuna explained. "It has been blessed, enhanced. It will withstand scrutiny far better than I initially believed possible." He accessed the GDA database again, pulling up Arama's newly created profile. The information was the same as before, but there was now a subtle layer of protection, a divine seal that masked any inconsistencies and deflected any attempts to tamper with the data. "It seems your new identity has been verified at the highest levels," Sukuna murmured, a hint of wry amusement in his voice. "No one will question who you are, where you came from, or what you're doing here. You are now officially Aoi Tsukumo." Arama's eyes widened slightly. "By whose power, Sukuna-sama?" "By the power of heaven itself," Sukuna replied, and for the first time in centuries, he found himself smiling at something not entirely of his own making. "It seems even the divine have their uses," he added, mostly to himself. He set down the tablet and turned his attention to Arama, studying her with a critical eye. Now that she had a legitimate identity, the next step was to integrate her into this new world. "You'll need to familiarize yourself with modern customs and technology," he said. "Learn to use a computer, a smartphone, a credit card. Observe how people interact, how they dress, how they speak." "I will learn quickly, Sukuna-sama," Arama assured him. "I have no doubt," Sukuna replied. "And while you're doing that, I'll be working on a more pressing problem." He turned away, pacing the dusty floor as he considered the implications of this unexpected divine intervention. Why would heaven, which had seemingly abandoned him centuries ago, suddenly take an interest in his affairs? It had a second son, after all, Satoru Gojo. Both of them having been born under celestial phenomenon. Satoru Gojo, shifting the balance of the world, the cloudless sky lit with bright stars, a sensation of pressure engulfing all of Japan upon his birth, as was what he read from the documents Kenjaku provided. It was a contrast to his birth phenomenon. Rather than something beautiful, his was destructive. The cursed energy of the entire nation boiled upon his first breath. Upon his first cry the rivers burned, sorcerers and civilians alike died. A demon he was called. Ironic, for he was heaven's first attempt at providing guidance toward sorcerers, as was what his grandmother Tengen told him. Rejection, hatred and revulsion towards their supposed guide. Their savior from the evils of curses. Sukuna scoffed at the thought. He had defied that purpose. Guidance towards those weaklings who only knew to show him hate? Ridiculous. Though still, beyond it all one must wonder and question, why the aid? Why aid him despite his rebellion to his purpose? Sukuna turned back to Arama, a new thought occurring to him. The divine intervention was indeed unprecedented. Heaven did not simply bestow favors without cause or invocation. "Arama," he said, his voice taking on a more formal tone, "tell me the exact wording of your binding vow. The precise terms you used to sever your connection to the binding vow system." Arama straightened, her expression solemn as she recalled the ritual that had brought her across dimensions. "Of course, Sukuna-sama." She closed her eyes, reciting from memory, "I, Arama, faithful servant to Ryomen Sukuna, the honored one, first son of heaven, do hereby relinquish my connection to the binding vow system that governs all jujitsu. I surrender this fundamental right so that I may follow my master beyond the boundaries of our world, wherever his essence may have traveled. By heaven's witness and by the authority granted to those who serve its firstborn, I claim passage to Sukuna-sama's side, that I may continue my service as was ordained when first I pledged myself to him." Sukuna's eyes narrowed as he processed her words. "By heaven's witness," he repeated softly, "and by the authority granted to those who serve its firstborn." "Yes, Sukuna-sama," Arama confirmed. "I invoked your status as heaven's firstborn to strengthen the vow. Was that presumptuous of me?" "No," Sukuna said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "It was clever. Perhaps more clever than you realized." He paced the room again, the pieces falling into place. "You invoked heaven directly in your vow. You claimed authority through your service to me, to the first son. And heaven responded." "I don't understand, Sukuna-sama," Arama admitted, her brow furrowing slightly. "Heaven does not interfere in mortal affairs without invitation. The vow system akin to a hand of it being called upon," Sukuna explained. "It cannot otherwise act directly. Your binding vow created such a channel, not just to find me, but to establish your place at my side." He gestured to the tablet, displaying her new identity. "The protection now surrounding your fabricated identity isn't my doing, nor is it merely digital. It's divine sanction. Heaven has acknowledged your right to be here with me." Arama's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Then my vow, it continues to function even though I surrendered my ability to make binding vows?" "In a manner of speaking," Sukuna nodded. "The vow itself is complete. You found me, as you intended. But the invocation of heaven's witness created an ongoing recognition of your status. A divine acknowledgement that you belong at my side." He studied her with renewed interest. "You may have surrendered your ability to make binding vows, Arama, but in doing so, you gained something perhaps more valuable, heaven's recognition of your service to its firstborn son." Arama bowed her head, humbled by the implications. "I sought only to find you, Sukuna-sama. Any other consequence was unintended." "Intended or not, it works in our favor," Sukuna replied. "Your presence here now has divine sanction. Even those who might sense something unusual about your existence in this world will find their suspicions diverted." He fell silent for a moment, contemplating this unexpected development. Heaven, which had turned from him when he rejected his purpose as its guide, had now indirectly aided his faithful servant. Perhaps not for his sake, but for hers, for the devotion she had shown in following her ordained path when he himself had abandoned his. "The irony is not lost on me," he murmured, more to himself than to Arama. "Heaven aids the servant while continuing to ignore the son." "Sukuna-sama?" Arama questioned softly. He waved away her concern. "It's nothing. A reflection on old grievances that matter little now." He returned his attention to the practical matters at hand. "We should continue with your integration. There is much to teach you about this world and how to navigate it." As they resumed their discussion of modern customs and technology, Sukuna found himself contemplating the complex web of divine intervention, personal choice, and cosmic balance that had brought them to this point. Heaven may have abandoned him when he rejected his purpose, but it had not forgotten him, nor, apparently, those who remained faithful to him despite his fall. A gift for the fallen son's most loyal servant. Perhaps even a message to the son himself. Sukuna dismissed the thought. Divine intentions were irrelevant. What mattered was that Arama was here, her presence legitimized beyond what he could have arranged himself. Another piece on the board as he prepared for the coming conflict with the Viltrumites. And perhaps, though he would scarcely admit it even to himself, a welcome reminder of a time when he was not just powerful, but truly revered. The Grayson household buzzed with unusual activity. Debbie moved about the kitchen with excited energy, arranging platters and checking the dining room table for the third time. Mark leaned against the doorframe, watching his mother's preparations with amusement. "Mom, it's just dinner with Megumi and his friend," he said. "Not a state dinner with the president." Debbie paused, smoothing her apron. I know. But it's the first time Megumi's ever brought a friend here. I want to make a good impression." Mark smiled. "I think that ship sailed when he found out Dad was planning to conquer Earth." "Mark." Debbie scolded, though there was no real heat in it. They had all grown accustomed to the strange new reality of their family situation over the past months. Nolan entered from his study, eyebrow raised at the elaborate preparations. "Debbie, I think you've outdone yourself." "I just want everything to be perfect," she replied. "Megumi's become important to this family. If his friend is important to him, then—" The doorbell rang, interrupting her explanation. Mark pushed off from the doorframe. "I'll get it." He opened the door to find Megumi standing beside a slender Japanese woman with striking features and an air of composed dignity. She wore a simple but elegant black dress that somehow made her look both modern and timeless. "Hey," Mark greeted, stepping aside. "Come in. Mom's been cooking all day." "This is Tsukumo," Megumi said as they entered, his tone casual, but with an underlying formality that Mark had come to recognize as his friend shifting into a more public persona. "She's a chef I've been hiring to prepare meals for me occasionally." Tsukumo bowed slightly, her movements precise and graceful. "It is a pleasure to meet Megumi-san's friends," she said, her accent noticeable but her English clear. "Thank you for inviting me to your home." Mark led them to the living room where Nolan and Debbie waited. The introductions continued, with Debbie warmly welcoming Tsukumo, while Nolan studied her with that penetrating gaze he reserved for new variables in his environment. "A chef?" Nolan inquired, his tone conversational but his eyes watchful. "That's an interesting profession." "I specialize in traditional Japanese cuisine," Tsukumo replied with perfect composure. "Megumi-san appreciates authentic flavors that are difficult to find in this city." "Tsukumo is being modest," Megumi interjected. "Her food rivals the best I've ever tasted." Coming from Megumi, whose appreciation for culinary excellence was well known among his friends, this was high praise indeed. Debbie's eyes lit up with interest. "I'd love to hear about these cooking techniques," she said, gesturing toward the kitchen. "Would you mind if I asked for some tips while we finish preparing dinner?" "It would be my honor," Tsukumo replied with another small bow. As the women moved toward the kitchen, Mark noticed something curious. The way Megumi's eyes followed Tsukumo, not with the interest of someone attracted to her, but with something more complex. Something almost protective. "So," Nolan said once they were alone, "how did you meet your chef friend?" Megumi's expression remained neutral. "I found her restaurant online. After tasting her food, I arranged for private cooking services." "Convenient," Nolan observed. "And she just happened to be available whenever you needed her?" "Good food is worth arranging one's schedule around," Megumi replied smoothly. Mark glanced between them, sensing the subtle tension. "Dad, what's with the third degree? Megumi's allowed to have friends outside the team." Nolan's expression softened slightly. "Of course. I'm merely curious about someone new entering our circle, given our unique situation." From the kitchen, the sound of Debbie's delighted laughter floated through the house. Whatever Tsukumo had shared with her had clearly made an impression. "She seems nice," Mark offered, trying to break the tension. "And if she cooks as well as you say, maybe we should hire her for family dinners sometimes." "Perhaps," Megumi agreed, though something in his tone suggested he found the idea unlikely. Mark hesitated before adding in a lower voice, "Eve is going to lose her mind when she finds out about this, you know." Megumi's expression remained carefully neutral. "Why would Eve have any reaction to my hiring a chef?" "Come on," Mark said with a knowing look. "You've seen how she gets about you. She practically scans anyone who comes within 10 feet of you with those molecular vision eyes of hers." "Eve's interest is scientific," Megumi replied dismissively. Mark snorted. "Yeah, and Dad's just a regular science writer." Dinner itself was a curious blend of Debbie's home cooking and elements that Tsukumo had clearly influenced, the presentation more artful, certain flavors more pronounced. Throughout the meal, Mark observed the dynamic between Megumi and Tsukumo with growing interest. They didn't interact like new acquaintances. There was a familiarity in their exchanges, a shorthand in their communication that suggested a much longer association than Megumi had implied. Tsukumo anticipated Megumi's preferences without being told, serving him precisely what he wanted before he could ask. More telling was how Megumi behaved around her, slightly less guarded than usual, his responses less measured. as if her presence allowed him to relax a fraction of his perpetual vigilance. "Tsukumo," Nolan said during a lull in the conversation, "Megumi mentioned you're a freelance chef. Have you been in that line of work long?" "Several years," she replied smoothly. "I trained in Japan before coming to America to expand my culinary horizons." "And what brought you to this particular city?" Nolan pressed, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. Tsukumo met his gaze without hesitation. "Opportunity. There are few authentic Japanese chefs here, which creates demand for my skills." "Lucky for Megumi," Debbie interjected with a warm smile. "Finding food that reminds you of home must be comforting." "Indeed," Tsukumo agreed, her eyes briefly meeting Megumi's. "Familiar tastes can ground us, even in unfamiliar surroundings." The conversation shifted to other topics: school, current events, the ongoing preparations for what everyone present knew was coming but avoided naming directly. Throughout it all, Mark continued his observation, increasingly certain that there was more to Tsukumo than Megumi was revealing. After dinner, as they moved to the living room for coffee, Mark managed to catch Megumi alone for a moment in the hallway. "So you want to tell me the real story?" he asked quietly. Megumi raised an eyebrow. "About Tsukumo," Mark said. "You two have known each other a lot longer than you're letting on." For a moment, Megumi seemed to consider his options. Then, with a slight nod, he acknowledged the truth of Mark's observation. "She's an old friend," he admitted. "Someone I knew before. I trust her completely." "Why the secrecy then?" Mark asked, genuinely curious rather than accusatory. "Simplicity," Megumi replied. "The fewer complications in our current situation, the better." Mark studied his friend, recognizing there was still more being left unsaid. But he also understood Megumi well enough by now to know when not to push. "She seems cool," he said instead. "And Mom's practically adopted her already. Though seriously," he added, lowering his voice, "Eve is going to freak. You know how she gets about you. She's been doing that weird molecular scan thing on you every time we mention any woman in the same sentence as your name. Between you and me," Mark stated his last words, becoming a whisper, "I think she's checking whether you know." Mark began, making a ring with 2 fingers and a single finger near it, released it with anyone. Megumi's expression remained impassive, but a flicker of annoyance crossed his features at Mark's crude gesture. "Eve's personal concerns are irrelevant to our mission," he replied coolly. "And I'd suggest focusing on more pressing matters than juvenile speculation about others' private lives." Mark raised his hands defensively. "Hey, I'm just giving you a heads up. You know how Eve gets when she's interested in something. Or someone. So-called scientific curiosity and all that." Before Megumi could respond, they were interrupted by Debbie calling them back to the living room. The rest of the evening passed without incident, though Mark continued to observe the curious dynamic between Megumi and Tsukumo with growing fascination. Later that week, Megumi returned to his apartment after a particularly grueling training session with the teen team. His muscles ached pleasantly from exertion, a reminder of progress made in their preparations for the coming Viltrumite threat. The apartment was quiet, Uncle Kenji having gone out with friends from a hospital, a rare social evening made possible by his reduced work schedule. The financial support from the GDA had transformed his uncle's life, allowing him time for friendships and hobbies long neglected during years of overtime shifts. Megumi moved through the darkened apartment with practiced ease, making his way to the kitchen. The light from the refrigerator illuminated Arama, who stood at the counter preparing what appeared to be a late dinner. "You sensed my approach," Megumi observed, not surprised by her presence. They had established this routine over the past week, Arama arriving to prepare meals when Uncle Kenji was absent. "Of course, Sukuna-sama," she replied, her movements precise as she arranged sliced fish on a plate. "Your energy signature is unmistakable, even when suppressed." Megumi nodded, taking a seat at the kitchen island to watch her work. There was something again oddly comforting about having her here, a connection to his past life that, despite its complications, felt like a form of continuity in this strange new existence. "The Graysons were impressed by you when I introduced you," he commented, accepting a cup of tea she had prepared in anticipation of his arrival. Arama inclined her head slightly in acknowledgement. The mother is kind. The son is observant. The father. She paused, considering her words carefully. The father carries power and suspicion in equal measure. An accurate assessment, Megumi agreed. Nolan Grayson is not easily deceived. Yet he accepted my presence, Arama noted, arranging vegetables with artistic precision. For now, Megumi replied. His focus remains on the larger threat to Earth. A chef, even one with unusual energy, is a minor concern by comparison. The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Megumi tensed slightly. They weren't expecting visitors, and Uncle Kenji had his own keys. Remain here, he instructed Arama, rising from his seat. He moved to the door with cautious steps, extending his senses to identify the visitor. The familiar signature of molecular energy confirmed his suspicion before he even reached the entrance. Eve. He opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, a tablet clutched in one hand and a determined expression on her face. Eve, he greeted her, keeping his tone neutral. This is unexpected. Sorry to drop by unannounced, she said, though her expression suggested she wasn't particularly sorry. But I've made a breakthrough with the quantum destabilizer targeting system. I thought you'd want to see it right away. She was already moving past him into the apartment before he could respond, her steps purposeful as she headed toward the living room. I've managed to isolate the specific molecular signature that differentiates Viltrumite's cellular structure from human, she continued, activating her tablet. If we modify the resonance frequency to dash, she stopped abruptly as she sensed another presence in the apartment. Her head turned toward the kitchen, where Arama stood in the doorway, her posture composed but alert. The atmosphere shifted instantly, a palpable tension filling the space between the two women. Oh, Eve said, her voice carefully controlled. I didn't realize you had company. Megumi moved to stand between them, his expression revealing nothing of his internal calculations. Eve, this is Tsukumo Aoi, he introduced formally. She's a chef I've hired to prepare authentic Japanese cuisine. A chef, Eve repeated, her eyes briefly flashing pink as she instinctively activated her powers. How convenient. Arama bowed slightly, her face a perfect mask of polite deference. It is a pleasure to meet Megumi-san's colleague. Eve's smile didn't reach her eyes. Colleague? I think we're a bit more than that. She moved closer to Megumi, casually placing her hand on his arm. Megumi and I have been working closely together for months now. We've developed quite the connection. Arama's expression remained impassive, though her eyes tracked Eve's hand on Megumi's arm. I've been helping Megumi refine his abilities, Eve continued, not removing her hand. We spend hours together in the lab. Just the two of us. It's quite intimate work. Eve, Megumi said, his tone carrying a subtle warning as he gently but firmly removed her hand from his arm. Tsukumo has prepared dinner. Perhaps you'd like to continue our discussion over a meal. Eve's eyes narrowed slightly at the rebuff, but she recovered quickly. Actually, I brought dinner for us. She gestured to a bag by the door that Megumi hadn't noticed earlier. I thought we could go over the data while we ate. Just us. How thoughtful, Arama commented, her voice perfectly neutral. However, I have already prepared Megumi-san's favorite dishes. Perhaps another time. Eve turned to face Arama fully, her stance subtly shifting to one of challenge. I'm sure your cooking is lovely, but Megumi and I have important work to discuss. Time-sensitive matters that can't wait. The quantum destabilizer, Megumi interjected smoothly. You mentioned a breakthrough? Yes, Eve said, activating her tablet again, though her attention remained partially on Arama. I've made significant progress on the targeting system. Something I wanted to share with you first, before the others. She emphasized the last words, a clear message of privileged status. Perhaps I should leave you to your discussion, Arama offered, though she made no move to actually depart. No need, Eve replied with false sweetness. I'm sure you can continue your cooking, while Megumi and I work. were used to focusing despite distractions. She moved to the living room couch, deliberately setting her tablet on the coffee table and arranging herself comfortably, as if staking a claim to the space. Megumi, I need your input on these calibration parameters. Megumi glanced between the two women, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. Tsukumo, please continue with dinner preparations. Eve and I will review her findings in the meantime. Aroma bowed slightly. Of course, Megumi-san. As Arama returned to the kitchen, Eve patted the space beside her on the couch. These calculations are quite detailed. You'll need to sit close to see properly. Megumi chose the adjacent armchair instead, maintaining a professional distance. I can see perfectly well from here. Eve's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. As you wish. She began her presentation, her voice carrying just loud enough to ensure it would reach the kitchen. As I was saying, I've been working on this nonstop. Barely sleeping, really. But it's worth it when we make progress together. For the next 20 minutes, Eve outlined her findings, her explanation scientifically sound but peppered with unnecessary slightly loud personal references. Remember when we discussed this late in the lab last week? And that approach you suggested during our dinner really paid off. Megumi listened attentively, offering insights and suggestions where appropriate, all while acutely aware of the emotional undercurrent swirling beneath the scientific discussion. When Eve finally concluded her presentation, she closed her tablet with a decisive snap. So, what do you think? With these modifications, we could have a functional prototype within a week. Your work is impressive, Megumi acknowledged genuinely. The targeting solution is elegant. Eve's expression softened slightly at the praise, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Thank you. I've been working on it non-stop since our last session. A delicate cough from the kitchen doorway drew their attention. Arama stood there, her posture respectful. Forgive the interruption, but dinner is prepared, Megumi-san. Should I set a place for your guest as well? Before Megumi could respond, Eve rose from the couch, moving to stand close beside him. Actually, I think Megumi and I should continue this discussion at my lab. We have equipment there that would help visualize these calculations better. She turned to him, her expression a mixture of determination and possessiveness. Don't you agree? The discussion can continue here, Megumi replied evenly. The data is comprehensive, and your explanation was clear. Eve's smile became fixed. But the prototype components are at the lab. We could make actual progress tonight if we went there now. The hour is late, Megumi observed. And we both need to maintain our strength for tomorrow's training session. Eve hesitated, clearly weighing her options. Then, with visible reluctance, she nodded. You're right, of course. Efficiency requires proper rest. She gathered her tablet, her movements precise and controlled. I should go then. Let you enjoy your dinner. She walked to the door with Megumi following, then paused in the entryway. Oh, I almost forgot. Cecil wants us to run a joint simulation tomorrow with the Guardians. He specifically requested that you and I work together on the tactical approach. Her voice carried just enough to ensure Arama would hear. We make such an effective team, after all. I'll be at the facility at the usual time, Megumi confirmed. Eve smiled, reaching out to straighten an imaginary wrinkle on his shirt collar. Perfect. I'll be waiting. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a more intimate level. She's not just a chef to you, is she? Megumi met her gaze steadily. Tsukumo is exactly what I said she is. No one is ever exactly what they seem, Megumi, Eve replied, her eyes searching his. Not even you. She stepped back, her professional demeanor reasserting itself. Especially not you. We all contain multitudes, Megumi replied, using the phrase that had become something of a refrain between them. Some more than others, Eve responded with a pointed look toward the kitchen. She stepped into the hallway, then turned back one last time. I'll see you tomorrow. Don't be late. With that parting instruction, she departed, leaving Megumi standing in the doorway, watching her retreating figure with a mixture of concern and resignation. When he returned to the kitchen, Arama was arranging their meal with her usual precision, her expression revealing nothing of her thoughts. "She is perceptive," Arama observed quietly, placing a perfectly arranged plate before him. "And possessive. Reminds me of someone." Yorozu's name was unspoken between them. Megumi sat, appreciating the artistry of the presentation. "Eve is complicated. She sees you clearly," Arama continued, taking her own seat across from him. "Or at least, she believes she does. She senses your true nature, even if she cannot name it." "Eve sees patterns where others see only chaos," Megumi acknowledged. "It makes her valuable as an ally, but also potentially problematic." "And as more than an ally?" Arama asked, her tone carefully neutral as she poured tea. Megumi paused, considering the question. "That remains to be seen." Though perhaps not for long, since he himself has begun to consider what it would be like to accept her advances. They ate in companionable silence for a while, the familiar flavors of Arama's cooking bringing a sense of continuity that transcended worlds and lifetimes. "She will return," Arama said finally. "Her curiosity and her possessiveness will drive her to seek answers." "I know," Megumi replied. "And when she does, we'll be prepared." "As you wish, Sukuna-sama," Arama said with a slight bow of her head. As they continued their meal, Megumi found himself contemplating the growing complications in his carefully constructed life. Eve's perception, Arama's presence, the approaching Viltrumite threat, all variables in an increasingly complex equation. But complexity, like the flavors in a well-prepared dish, could be appreciated for its own sake. And as the greatest sorcerer he knew well, true mastery came not from avoiding complications, but from turning them to one's advantage. 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and tension. The quantum destabilizer project had entered its final testing phase. The Guardians and Teen Team had established joint training protocols, and Earth's defenses were steadily strengthening against the coming Viltrumite threat. Yet amid this global crisis, a more personal tension had been building to breaking point. Eve stood in her laboratory, staring at the molecular simulation before her without really seeing it. Her mind was elsewhere, replaying the same patterns that had consumed her thoughts for weeks. Megumi and Tsukumo. Every interaction she'd observed between them carried an intimacy that drove her to distraction. The way they communicated without words, the way Tsukumo anticipated Megumi's needs before he expressed them, the way his usual guardedness softened slightly in her presence. It wasn't romantic. Eve had analyzed their body language enough to determine that much. But it was something. Something deep and established. Something that excluded her completely. And it was driving her mad. She'd started tracking their movements obsessively, creating complex algorithms to predict where they might appear together, manufacturing reasons to be present whenever they met. Her lab notebooks, once filled with elegant scientific formulas, now contained pages of observations about their interactions, precise timestamps, duration of eye contact, frequency of proximity. "Simulation complete," the computer announced, startling her from her thoughts. Eve blinked, forcing her attention back to the task at hand. The quantum destabilizer's targeting system had successfully discriminated between Viltrumite and human cellular structures in all 500 test scenarios. Under normal circumstances, this achievement would have filled her with triumph. Instead, she felt only a hollow satisfaction, her thoughts immediately turning to sharing the news with Megumi. Would he be impressed? Would this finally be enough to break through his careful distance? She ran her fingers over the simulation results, imagining his reaction. Would his eyes light up with that rare spark of genuine interest? Would he offer one of those rare, precious compliments that she collected and replayed in her mind during sleepless nights? The laboratory door slid open behind her, and Eve turned, her heart rate accelerating as she recognized Megumi's energy signature before she even saw him. She'd become attuned to it over the months, could sense his presence from across a crowded room, could distinguish the subtle variations that indicated his mood or level of energy expenditure. "Your message said the final simulations were complete," he said, moving to examine the data displayed across her screens. "Yes," Eve confirmed, unable to keep a hint of pride from her voice. "Perfect discrimination across all test scenarios. The prototype is ready for physical testing." She watched him intently, cataloging every micro-expression, every subtle shift in his posture. Her enhanced perception, normally focused on molecular structures, had been repurposed to study him with scientific precision. Megumi nodded, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts as he studied the results. Impressive work. Cecil will be pleased. Cecil, Eve repeated, a bitter edge entering her voice. Is that all you can think about? Pleasing Cecil? Preparing for the Viltrumites. Megumi turned to her, one eyebrow raised slightly. Isn't that what we've been working toward? Earth's defense. Yes, but Eve stopped, frustrated by her inability to articulate what she really wanted to say. She turned away, her hands clenching at her sides. Never mind. I'll inform Cecil that the targeting system is ready for implementation. She moved to send the message, but Megumi's voice stopped her. Something's bothering you, he observed. Not a question, but a statement of fact. Eve laughed, the sound brittle even to her own ears. You think? She turned back to face him, weeks of frustration finally boiling over. 3 weeks, Megumi. 3 weeks of you avoiding being alone with me. 3 weeks of bringing her to every team gathering. 3 weeks of watching you two communicate in some private language no one else understands. Megumi's expression remained carefully neutral. Tsukumo is don't, Eve interrupted, raising a hand. Don't tell me she's just a chef. Don't insult my intelligence that way. She stepped closer to him, her eyes glowing faintly pink as her emotions affected her molecular control. What I want to know is why. Why won't you give us a chance? Is there something wrong with me? The raw vulnerability in her voice seemed to catch Megumi off guard. For a moment, his careful mask slipped, revealing something almost like confusion beneath. There's nothing wrong with you, Eve, he said finally, his tone softer than usual. Then why? She pressed, moving closer still. Why won't you accept what's between us? Why won't you love me like I love you? The words hung in the air between them, Eve's declaration finally spoken aloud after months of growing feelings. Her heart pounded in her chest, fear and hope warring within her as she waited for his response. Megumi studied her for a long moment, his red eyes unreadable. Why do you think you love me, Eve? He asked finally, his voice carefully neutral. The question caught her off guard. What do you mean, why? How can you ask that after everything we've been through together? Humor me, he replied, his gaze never leaving hers. What is it about me that inspires such devotion? Eve's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed with determination. If he wanted reasons, she would give him reasons. You're brilliant, she began, her voice gaining strength. Your mind works in ways that challenge me, that make me think differently. You see patterns others miss, connections that elude everyone else. She began pacing, her hands moving expressively as she continued. You're powerful but controlled. I've watched you in battle, the precision, the economy of movement, the absolute mastery over your abilities. It's beautiful. Like watching the perfect chemical reaction, where every element behaves exactly as it should. Megumi remained silent, watching her with that intense focus that always made her feel simultaneously exposed and exhilarated. You appreciate beauty, she continued. Not just superficial beauty, but true artistry. The way you respond to exceptional food, to elegant solutions, to perfect execution, it reveals a depth most people lack. I've cataloged every instance where your expression changes when tasting something extraordinary. Did you know that? The slight relaxation around your eyes, the almost imperceptible nod of appreciation. She paused, realizing she might have revealed too much about her observations, but unable to stop now that the floodgates had opened. And you see me, she said, her voice dropping lower, more intense. Really see me. Not just Atom Eve the hero, or the science prodigy, but me. You challenge me, you respect my mind, you treat me as an equal. Her eyes began to glow brighter with emotion. Do you have any idea what that means to me? To be truly seen? My parents never saw me, not really. They saw a project, an achievement to boast about. Our daughter, the prodigy, they'd say to their colleagues. but they never asked what I wanted, what I dreamed about. The bitterness in her voice was palpable now. When my powers manifested, they were terrified, not for me but of me. Of what I might do to their precious reputation if word got out. "Control yourself, Samantha," they'd say. "Don't draw attention." As if my entire existence was an inconvenience to their academic careers. She laughed, a hollow sound. And then when I couldn't hide it anymore, when my best friend betrayed me and told everyone about my abilities, they didn't comfort me. They were angry that I had allowed myself to be discovered. We moved 3 times because of it, and each time, they made it clear that it was my fault, my burden to bear. Eve's hands clenched at her sides, pink energy crackling around her fingers. Even when I joined the teen team, it wasn't about me. It was about my powers, my usefulness. Rex sees me as a tool, a convenient molecular manipulator to complement his explosions. Kate sees me as a competitor. The others see the scientist, the problem solver, the team member. Her voice broke slightly. But you, from that first day in the museum, when I froze and you didn't, you never judged me. You understood my fear without me having to explain it. You saw my weakness and didn't use it against me. She took a step closer, her eyes searching his. And then in the lab, working together, you treated my mind as valuable, not just my powers. You listened to my theories, challenged my assumptions, pushed me to think beyond conventional models. Do you know how rare that is? To be valued for your mind, rather than what you can do for others. Eve's expression intensified, a fervent light entering her eyes. I've studied you, Megumi. Every movement, every word, every reaction. I know when you're holding back in training. I can see the precise moment you decide to restrain your true capabilities. I know which foods make your pupils dilate slightly with pleasure. I know that you sleep an average of 4.3 hours per night based on the subtle variations in your energy signature throughout the day. She was breathing faster now, her control slipping as she continued her confession. I've analyzed the molecular composition of every woman who approaches you, looking for weaknesses, for flaws. I've created simulations of potential scenarios where we might be separated, developing countermeasures for each one. I've even calculated the optimal molecular structure for our potential offspring, though I know that's premature. Eve stopped suddenly, seemingly shocked by her own admission, but then her expression hardened with resolve. And yes, I know how that sounds. I know it's not normal. But neither are we, Megumi. Neither are you. You're extraordinary, and ordinary measures of devotion would be insufficient. She took another step closer, close enough now that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. And then there's this connection between us. This resonance. I can feel it on a molecular level, the way our energies interact, complement each other. Don't tell me you don't feel it too. Megumi remained silent for several heartbeats, his expression unreadable. Then, to Eve's surprise, he sighed, a small sound that nevertheless carried weight. I feel something, he acknowledged finally. But Eve, I'm not. He paused, seeming to struggle with his words, a rarity for someone usually so precise in his speech. I'm not familiar with this kind of connection. Eve's brow furrowed slightly. What do you mean? Despite my experience with women, he continued carefully, and Eve's expression darkened visibly at the reminder of his past lovers, her fingers twitching as if she wanted to reach out and erase the very memory of them from existence. I have no experience with the emotional aspects of such relationships. The admission seemed to cost him something, a vulnerability he rarely displayed. Connections are difficult for me. Always have been. Eve's expression softened, hope rekindling in her chest. That's all? That's why you've been keeping me at a distance? Because you're not used to emotional connections. She moved closer, emboldened by his admission. Megumi, that's not a reason to avoid trying. It's a reason to start. We can learn together. Her eyes gleamed with a fervent light once more. I can teach you, guide you. I've studied human relationships extensively, analyzed the chemical and neurological components of emotional bonding. I understand the theoretical framework perfectly. It's not that simple, he countered. though something in his tone had shifted. I'm not, like other people, Eve. The way I think, the way I feel. It's different. I know that, she insisted, a desperate edge entering her voice. That's part of why she stopped, took a breath, then continued more carefully. That's part of what draws me to you. You're unlike anyone I've ever met. She reached out, hesitantly placing her hand on his arm. Just give us a chance. That's all I'm asking. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I need you, Megumi. I've calculated all possible scenarios for my future, and every optimal outcome includes you. Every single one. Megumi looked down at her hand, then back to her face. Something shifted in his expression, the careful neutrality giving way to something more primal, more intense. In a fluid motion that caught Eve completely by surprise, he reversed their positions, pinning her against the laboratory wall. His hands gripped her wrists, holding them firmly but not painfully above her head, his body close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. Do you truly understand what you're asking for, Eve? He asked, his voice lower, rougher than she'd ever heard it. I don't date as you might understand it. I don't share. I don't compromise on what I consider mine. His eyes held hers, intense and unblinking. And I am not above removing obstacles that displease me. Permanently. The thinly veiled threat should have frightened her. Instead, Eve felt a shiver of excitement run down her spine, her pupils dilating as she stared back at him. This was the true Megumi, the primal force she had glimpsed beneath his controlled exterior, the power she had sensed lurking behind his careful mask. Good, she whispered, her voice husky with desire. Because I feel the same way. Why do you think I've been scanning every woman who comes near you? Why do you think I've been watching Tsukumo like a hawk? I don't share either, Megumi. A smile spread across her face, not her usual scientific curiosity, but something darker, more possessive. I've wanted you since I first saw what you could do. Since I first realized how your mind works. You're mine. Whether you've accepted it yet or not. Her eyes glowed with an almost feverish intensity. Do you know I've mapped the molecular structure of every inch of the lab where you've stood? That I can recreate your energy signature in my simulations with 99.8% accuracy? That I've calculated precisely how much force it would take to disassemble someone at the molecular level if they tried to take you from me. For a moment, they remained frozen in that tableau, predator and predator, each recognizing something of themselves in the other. Then Megumi's lips curved into a smile that made Eve's heart race. Perhaps we understand each other better than I thought, he murmured. Before she could respond, his mouth claimed hers in a kiss that was nothing like the tentative first explorations of new lovers. This was possession, dominance, acclaiming, and Eve responded with equal fervor, her body arching against his as she returned the kiss with a passion that matched his own. Her hands, still pinned above her head, strained against his grip, not to escape, but to touch him, to claim him as he was claiming her. He released her wrists, and immediately her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer as the kiss deepened. His hands moved to her waist, then lower, lifting her effortlessly as she wrapped her legs around him. The laboratory equipment around them trembled slightly as Eve's molecular control wavered under the onslaught of sensation. Beakers cracked, computer screens flickered, and the molecular simulation she'd been working on earlier dissolved into random patterns as her powers responded to her emotional state. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Eve's eyes were glowing pink with power and desire. My apartment, she gasped. Now. Megumi's eyes held a gleam that sent another shiver down her spine. Now, he agreed, his voice a command rather than an acknowledgement. As they left the laboratory, Eve couldn't help the triumphant smile that spread across her face. She had finally broken through his defenses. Finally claimed what she had known was hers from the moment she truly saw him. And if his possessiveness matched her own, if his darkness complemented hers, well, that only made the victory sweeter. After all, what was love if not the perfect molecular bond between complementary elements? Between souls? And they were nothing if not perfectly matched in their obsession. She'd been right all along. They were meant for each other, designed to fit together with atomic precision. All the data, all her observations and calculations, had led to this inevitable conclusion. Megumi Fushiguro belonged to her now, and she would sooner tear apart the very fabric of reality than let anyone take him away. Morning light filtered through the half-drawn curtains of Eve's apartment, casting soft golden patterns across the rumpled sheets. Eve lay on her side, watching Megumi's profile as he stared at the ceiling, his expression thoughtful in the aftermath of their night together. Her body ached pleasantly, a physical reminder of the hours they'd spent exploring each other with an intensity that had surprised even her. For someone who claimed limited experience with emotional connections, Megumi had demonstrated remarkable proficiency in other areas. What? Megumi asked without turning his head, somehow sensing her scrutiny. Nothing, Eve replied, unable to keep a smile from her face. Just enjoying the view. This drew his attention, one eyebrow raising slightly as he turned to face her. The view. She confirmed, tracing a finger along his bare shoulder. It's a good one. You're staring, he pointed out, though there was amusement rather than criticism in his tone. Eve grinned unapologetically. Can you blame me? Besides, you started it with that thing you did around midnight. Which thing specifically? Megumi asked, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. You know exactly which thing, she replied, feeling her cheeks warm at the memory. The one that made me knock over the lamp. Ah, he nodded sagely. That thing. Don't look so smug, Eve chided, poking his chest. I seem to recall you nearly falling off the bed when I did that twist with my dash. I was repositioning for optimal leverage, he interrupted, though a slight darkening of his cheeks betrayed him. She was quite unique compared to his previous women. Eve laughed, the sound bright and unrestrained. Is that what we're calling it now? Would you prefer strategic realignment? He asked with mock seriousness. I'd prefer coffee, she replied, nestling closer against his side. But that requires movement, and I'm way too comfortable right now. Megumi's arm came around her, his hand tracing idle patterns along her spine. Movement is inefficient when the current position is optimal. Look at you, using my own logic against me, Eve said, delighted. I'm rubbing off on you already. A concerning development, he deadpanned. Eve smacked his chest lightly. Rude. For that, you're definitely making the coffee. Am I? Consider it your punishment for sass. Megumi's chest rumbled with a quiet laugh. I thought you were the one who broke the lamp. That was your fault and you know it, she countered, propping herself up on one elbow to look at him properly. You can't just do that and expect me to maintain control of all my faculties. Noted for future reference, he replied, his expression serious but his eyes betraying his amusement. Eve sighed dramatically. Fine. I suppose I can be magnanimous in victory and make the coffee myself. She sat up, stretching languidly, aware of his eyes on her. Besides, you'd probably make it too strong anyway. Victory. Megumi echoed, watching as she pulled on his discarded shirt. She confirmed with a smug smile. I got you into my bed, didn't I? After months of careful planning and execution. Careful planning, he repeated flatly. Oh please, Eve said, heading toward the kitchen. Like you didn't notice me creating increasingly flimsy excuses to be alone with you? The emergency lab consultations? The coincidental patrol route overlaps. From the kitchen came the sounds of coffee preparation and what suspiciously sounded like humming, a behavior Megumi had never observed from Eve before. Your subtlety could use refinement, he called out, sitting up against the headboard. Says the man who spent 3 weeks avoiding being alone with me, Eve called back. Real mature approach there. I was being cautious, Megumi defended. You were being ridiculous, Eve corrected, returning with 2 steaming mugs. Here. Black, no sugar, just like your soul. She handed him one mug and settled back beside him with her own, which was considerably lighter in color from added cream. How did you know my coffee preference? Megumi asked, taking a sip. It was, annoyingly, perfect. I pay attention, Eve replied simply. Unlike some people who pretend not to notice when a girl is practically throwing herself at them. I noticed, Megumi said quietly. And yet you kept bringing Tsukumo to every team gathering, Eve pointed out, though there was no real heat in her voice. Megumi tensed slightly beside her, but she continued before he could respond. Speaking of Tsukumo, she said, keeping her tone deliberately casual. She's not just a chef, and you two aren't romantically involved. It wasn't a question. Megumi met her gaze steadily. No, we're not romantically involved. But she's not just a chef, Eve pressed. No, he acknowledged after a moment. She's not. Eve nodded, having confirmed what she'd already deduced. And there's a lot of context I'm missing. Things about her, about you, that you're not telling me. Megumi studied her face, as if weighing how much to reveal. Yes, he said finally. There is. Eve considered this, then surprised him by settling back against his chest. Okay. Okay, he echoed, clearly having expected a different reaction. She confirmed. I've watched you two enough to know she's important to you, but not in a way that threatens this. She gestured between them. There's no romantic spark there, no matter how much it drove me crazy seeing you two together. She tilted her head to look up at him. I needed to know everything about you to make you mine. But I trust that you won't cheat on me, so I'm okay with not knowing all your secrets. For now. For now, he repeated, his arm coming around her shoulders, his hand finding its way to her breast, fingers tracing idle patterns that made her breath catch. You're surprisingly accepting, he observed, his touch becoming more deliberate, drawing a soft moan from her. I'm practical, Eve managed to reply, her body arching slightly into his touch. And I've got what I wanted most. The rest can wait. And what was it you wanted most? He asked, his voice dropping to that lower register that made her pulse quicken. You, she said simply. Just you. Megumi's lips curved into that rare, genuine smile that always made her heart skip a beat. Practical indeed, he murmured, his fingers continuing their exploration. And beautiful. And intelligent. And powerful. His touch became even more, making coherent thought increasingly difficult. I see no reason to seek other women for pleasure when you are of a higher quality than all of them. The matter-of-fact compliment, delivered in his typical straightforward tone, even as his hands were doing things that made her gasp, was so perfectly him that Eve couldn't help but laugh, a sound that quickly transformed into another moan. That's quite the compliment, she managed to say between increasingly ragged breaths. It's an accurate assessment, he replied, his smile being in a way that sent shivers down her spine. Wait, she gasped, placing a hand on his chest. Your coffee will get cold. I don't care about the coffee, Megumi murmured against her neck. I spent good money on those beans, Eve protested weakly, her resolve already crumbling as his touch became more insistent. I'll buy you more, he promised, his lips finding that spot behind her ear that made her forget all about coffee, morning schedules, or anything else beyond the sensation of his hands on her skin. Further conversation was temporarily suspended. You're going to be late for training with Mark, Eve observed later, watching as Megumi gathered his scattered clothing from around her bedroom. Mark will survive, he replied, pulling on his shirt. He'll ask questions, she warned, stretching languidly across the bed. Mark always asks questions, Megumi countered. Usually the wrong ones. Eve laughed. He's not as oblivious as you think. He's been making those annoying suggestive eyebrow wiggles whenever we're in the same room for weeks now. Mark's eyebrows are his own problem, Megumi stated, locating his second sock under the bed. What will you tell him? Eve asked, genuinely curious. Megumi straightened, fully dressed now, and regarded her with that penetrating gaze that had first captivated her attention. The truth. That my personal relationships are none of his business. That'll only make him more curious, Eve pointed out. Mark's curiosity is also his own problem. Eve sat up, pulling the sheet around her. And what about the others? Rex will be insufferable once he figures it out. Rex is perpetually insufferable, Megumi observed dryly. This changes nothing. Cecil will want to update his relationship matrices for the team. Cecil can update whatever he wants. It won't affect our work. Eve tilted her head, studying him. You're very calm about all this. Megumi approached the bed, leaning down until his face was level with hers. Should I not be? Most people have more concerns about workplace relationships, she explained. Team dynamics, professional boundaries, that sort of thing. Most people, Megumi replied, his voice dropping to that lower tone again that made her pulse quicken again. Don't have what we have. And what's that? Eve asked, her breath catching. A mutual understanding that anyone who interferes will face consequences, he stated simply, before kissing her with an intensity that left her momentarily breathless. When he pulled back, Eve couldn't help but smile. I've thought about what I'd do to anyone who tried to come between us, she admitted. It's not very heroic. Of course you have, Megumi replied, the corner of his mouth twitching in what might have been amusement. I would expect nothing less. He straightened, heading for the door. I'll see you at the facility later. Cecil wants to review the quantum destabilizer prototype. I'll be there, Eve promised. Maybe we can sneak away early, for coffee. Coffee, Megumi repeated, his expression deadpan but his eyes holding a promise that sent a pleasant shiver down her spine. Well, among other things, she amended with a grin. After the door closed behind him, Eve flopped back onto the bed, staring at the ceiling with an uncharacteristically giddy smile. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. Samantha Eve Wilkins, known to the world as Atom Eve, had successfully captured the most fascinating, complex, powerful being she'd ever encountered. A bubble of pure joy rose within her, completely at odds with her usual controlled demeanor. She bounced up from the bed, spinning in a circle in the middle of her bedroom, arms outstretched. He's mine, she whispered to the empty apartment, then louder, he's mine. She jumped onto her bed, bouncing like an excited child, all pretense of sophisticated composure abandoned in her private celebration. The pillows went flying as she leaped from the bed to her dresser, performing an impromptu victory dance that would have shocked her teammates had they witnessed it. Mine, 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 she sang, twirling around her bedroom, pink energy swirling around her in response to her joy, lifting small objects into the air in a miniature celebration. She caught sight of herself in the mirror, hair disheveled, wearing nothing but Megumi's discarded t-shirt, face flushed with happiness, and burst into delighted laughter. Look at you, she told her reflection, pointing accusingly. The brilliant Atom Eve, dancing around like a teenager after her first kiss. Her reflection offered no response beyond her own giddy smile. But he's worth it, she continued, hugging herself tightly. He's absolutely worth it. She flopped back onto her bed, staring up at the ceiling with a dreamy expression that would have been unrecognizable to her teammates. Gone was the analytical scientist, the tactical asset, the controlled hero, replaced by a woman simply, completely happy. He's mine, she whispered again, hugging a pillow to her chest and inhaling the lingering scent of him. All mine. She rolled over, burying her face in the pillow to muffle a squeal of delight that would have mortified her if anyone had heard it. For all her powers, all her intelligence, all her careful planning, there was something wonderfully, perfectly human about this moment of pure joy. Tomorrow, she would return to being the brilliant, controlled Atom Eve, the molecular manipulator, the tactical asset, the scientific mind. She would help prepare Earth's defenses, would continue her research, would maintain her professional demeanor. But today, just for now, she would celebrate her victory the way any woman might, with ridiculous dancing, private smiles, and the lingering sensation of belonging to someone who, more importantly than anything, belonged to her. Mark's POV. I used to think being a superhero would be simpler. Bad guys do bad things, you stop them, everyone goes home happy. Black and white, good and evil, heroes and villains. Then my dad turned out to be an alien conqueror who slaughtered billions across the galaxy. And I still love him. That's the thing they don't tell you about morality. It gets complicated when it's personal. When the villain is someone you care about, someone who's tucked you in at night and taught you to throw a baseball and made your mom laugh that special way that lights up her whole face. I'm thinking about this as I fly over the city on my regular patrol route, the wind rushing past my mask, the familiar weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. 3 months since Dad's confession. 3 months of preparation for a war most of Earth doesn't even know is coming. 3 months of wondering what kind of person I am, that I can know what my father has done and still want him in my life. My communicator buzzes, bringing me back to the present. All clear in the financial district, I report automatically. Roger that, Invincible, the GDA operator responds. Continue your patrol route. I bank left, heading toward the industrial sector. The evening sky is painted in shades of orange and purple, the city lights just beginning to flicker on below. It's beautiful from up here. Peaceful. Hard to believe it might all be gone soon if we can't stop the Viltrumites. As I fly over an abandoned rail yard, something catches my eye. Graffiti on the side of a warehouse, fresh enough that the paint still glistens in the fading light. It's not the graffiti itself that makes me pause, it's what it spells out. In Vinci, the word is unfinished, as if the writer was interrupted. I descend cautiously, landing in the empty yard. The warehouse looms dark and silent, but I can sense I'm not alone. I know you're there, I call out, my voice echoing slightly in the open space. Show yourself. A figure emerges from the shadows, tall, muscular, with distinctive tribal tattoos covering his face and arms. I recognize him immediately. Titan, I say, tensing slightly. You're the guy from that robbery a while back. Good memory, kid, he replies, his deep voice carrying across the yard. I need your help. I don't move closer, remembering Megumi's lessons about maintaining tactical advantage. Why would I help you? Last I checked, you were a criminal. Because sometimes the line between criminal and victim gets blurred, Titan says, stepping fully into the light. Machine Head is destroying this city from the inside out. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking, nothing's off limits to him. And you're what, a concerned citizen? I can't keep the skepticism from my voice. I'm a father, Titan replies, his expression hardening, with a daughter who deserves better than to grow up in Machine Head's world. I study him, trying to read his intentions. Megumi's warned me repeatedly about manipulation, about how easily people can use your own heroic instincts against you. Why me? I ask. Why not go to the Guardians? Or the police? The police are in Machine Head's pocket, Titan says bitterly. And the Guardians don't bother with street-level problems like this. But you're new. Not part of the system yet. His words trigger a memory, a conversation with Megumi from a few weeks ago. Flashback. We were sitting on the roof of my house after a particularly grueling training session. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard below. My muscles ached from the hours of combat practice, but it was a good kind of pain, the kind that meant progress. Something's bothering you, Megumi observed, his eyes fixed on the horizon. I sighed, pulling my knees up to my chest. Just thinking about my dad. Ah. A single syllable, loaded with understanding. He's killed people, Megumi. Lots of people. Entire civilizations. I picked at a loose shingle. And I still love him. What does that make me? Megumi was quiet for a long moment before responding. It makes you human. Is that supposed to make me feel better? I asked, a bitter edge to my voice. It's not supposed to make you feel anything, he replied. It's simply a fact. Humans compartmentalize. They separate their personal feelings from objective reality. But isn't that wrong? I pressed. Shouldn't I hate him for what he's done? Megumi turned to look at me then, his expression unreadable. Do you want to hate him? No, I admitted. But maybe I should. Should, Megumi repeated, a hint of disdain in his voice. Who determines what you should feel? People? The world? Some civilization's abstract conception of justice. I didn't have an answer for that. I'll tell you my perspective, he continued after a moment. I care about what brings me pleasure and what brings me displeasure. I care about who I want to care about, and I hate who I want to hate. The opinions of the world mean nothing to me. He gestured toward the city spread out below us. Out there, they have their rules, their judgments, their ideas of good and evil. But those are just their own constructs, useful for maintaining order perhaps, but not binding on the individual soul. So what? Nothing matters? There's no right or wrong. I challenged. I didn't say that, Megumi corrected. I said I choose what matters to me. I choose what is right and wrong to me. I'll always do what I want, whether others consider it evil or good, so long as it brings me pleasure. He turned to me, his red eyes intense in the fading light. Your father has done terrible things. This is fact. You love him anyway. This is also fact. Both can exist simultaneously without contradiction. That sounds selfish, I said, though without judgment. Perhaps, he acknowledged. But isn't your love for your father selfish as well? You choose to love him despite knowing what he's done, because that love brings you comfort. Because a world where you hate your father is less pleasant than one where you love him. His words hit me like a physical blow, cutting through my confusion with brutal clarity. So what should I do? I asked, feeling suddenly very young. Whatever you want, Megumi replied simply. But own your choice. If you choose to love your father, do so without guilt or apology. If you choose to reject him, do so with the same conviction. But don't pretend your choice is dictated by anything other than your own desires. We sat in silence as darkness fell, his words echoing in my mind. For the first time since Dad's confession, I felt the weight of confusion lifting slightly. Not because Megumi had absolved me of responsibility, but because he'd forced me to confront the truth of my own feelings. I loved my father. I chose to love my father. And maybe that was okay. You still with me, kid? Titan's voice breaks through my memory. I refocus on the present, on the man standing before me, waiting for my decision. What exactly do you want me to do? I ask, more cautiously than I might have before those lessons. Help me take down Machine Head, Titan says. He's got an operation running tonight. If we hit him there, we can put a serious dent in his organization. I consider his request, weighing it against everything I've learned over the past months. The old Mark would have jumped at the chance to help, eager to prove himself, to do good without question. But I'm not that Mark anymore. Still, something about Titan's situation resonates with me. A father trying to create a better world for his child. Isn't that what I want my own father to be? Isn't that the version of Nolan Grayson I'm fighting to believe in? And beyond that, there's something appealing about taking action outside the carefully controlled GDA operations, the endless training sessions and preparation meetings. This is real heroism, immediate and tangible. The world needs to change. Not like the Viltrumite Empire wants, through conquest and subjugation, but through something more directed, more intelligent. In my mind, I see a better world led not by bureaucrats or alien conquerors, but by people who actually understand power. People like Sukuna, like my dad when he's not being an idiot about his mission, like Eve with her brilliant mind, like Mom with her unwavering moral compass. People who care about those they choose to care about, and who have the strength to protect them. And right now, I'm not liking this machine head guy. All right, I say finally. I'll help you. But we do this my way. No unnecessary casualties. No collateral damage. Titan nods, relief evident in his posture. Thank you. You won't regret this. I better not, I reply, my voice hard. When and where? Tomorrow night. I'll mark the location the same way I did here. He gestures to the unfinished graffiti. Be ready for a fight. I'm always ready, I tell him, and I mean it. Between Dad's training and Megumi's tactical lessons, I'm not the same inexperienced hero I was when I started. Titan melts back into the shadows, leaving me alone in the abandoned rail yard. I take to the sky again, resuming my patrol route while my mind processes what just happened. I should probably tell someone about this. Dad, or Megumi, or Cecil. That would be the responsible thing to do. But something holds me back. A desire to prove myself, perhaps. Or maybe just the simple pleasure of making my own decision, independent of the complex web of alliances and preparations that have dominated my life recently. Besides, It's just one night. One criminal operation. How complicated could it get? The next evening finds me hovering above an industrial complex on the city's outskirts, waiting for Titan to appear. The buildings below are dark and seemingly abandoned, perfect for illegal operations. You came, Titan's voice comes from behind me, and I turn to see him climbing onto the roof where I've landed. Good. What's the plan? I ask, all business. Machine Head's operation is in that building. He points to a warehouse at the center of the complex. He's got his enforcers inside, along with a shipment of weapons coming in from overseas. We hit hard, hit fast, and get out. How many enforcers? A dozen, maybe more. Nothing we can't handle. I nod, scanning the area. Something feels off about this setup, but I can't quite put my finger on what. Still, I've committed to this course of action. Lead the way, I tell Titan. We approach the warehouse cautiously, Titan moving with surprising stealth for someone his size. Through a skylight, I can see activity below, men moving crates, others standing guard with advanced-looking weapons. That's not street-level hardware, I whisper, noting the military-grade equipment. Those are high-tech weapons. Machine Head deals in everything, Titan replies grimly. Ready. Before I can answer, he smashes through the skylight, dropping into the warehouse with a roar. So much for the element of surprise. I follow immediately, landing beside him as the warehouse erupts into chaos. Guards scramble for weapons, shouting orders and warnings. Titan. A voice cuts through the commotion, and I turn to see a man seated behind a massive desk at the far end of the warehouse. His head is encased in what looks like a computer terminal, screens and circuitry where a face should be. Machine Head. You're more foolish than I thought, the digitized voice continues. And you've brought a child to your execution. It ends tonight, Machine Head, Titan growls, advancing toward the desk. Machine Head laughs, the sound distorted through his electronic interface. I think not. I've been expecting you, Titan. And I've prepared accordingly. A door opens at the side of the warehouse, and a massive figure steps through, at least 7 feet tall, white-furred, with a mane like a lion and the build of a professional bodybuilder. He's wearing battle armor adorned with weapons and what look like trophies. Allow me to introduce my newest associate, Machine Head says, satisfaction evident even through his electronic voice. Battle Beast. The alien warrior surveys the warehouse with contemptuous eyes, his gaze finally settling on me. Is this all? He rumbles, his voice deep and accented. I was promised worthy opponents. You'll find I'm plenty worthy, I say, dropping into a fighting stance. Battle Beast's eyes narrow, assessing me more carefully. Perhaps. Your stance suggests training. Good. It has been too long since I've had a challenge. He moves with shocking speed for his size, crossing the distance between us in a blur. I barely have time to raise my arms in defense before his fist connects with my chest, sending me crashing through the warehouse wall and into the yard beyond. Pain explodes through my body, real pain, the kind I've rarely felt since gaining my powers. I struggle to my feet, spitting blood. Battle Beast follows me through the hole in the wall, ignoring Titan completely. You are stronger than you look, young one, he observes. Good. A warrior's death should be earned. I launch myself at him, putting all my Viltrumite strength behind the punch. It connects solidly with his jaw, snapping his head back, but he only grins, revealing sharp fangs. Better, he growls. But not enough. What follows is the most brutal fight of my life. I use every technique Dad and Megumi have taught me, every ounce of strength and speed I possess. I land solid hits that would cripple ordinary opponents. Battle Beast barely seems to notice. His counterattacks are devastating, precise, powerful, and seemingly endless. Each blow feels like being hit by a freight train. Each block I manage sends shockwaves of pain up my arms. Through the haze of combat, I dimly register Titan fighting Machine Head's other enforcers. holding his own but clearly outmatched in numbers. I've made a terrible mistake coming here. This isn't a simple criminal takedown, it's something else entirely. And I'm in way over my head. A particularly vicious strike catches me in the ribs, and I hear something crack. I stagger, momentarily stunned by the pain, and Battle Beast seizes the opportunity. His massive hand closes around my throat, lifting me off the ground. "You fought well," he says, almost respectfully. "But not well enough. Still, you have earned a clean death." He draws back his other hand, now holding a wicked-looking blade that seems to pulse with energy. I struggle against his grip, but my strength is fading, my vision darkening at the edges. This is it. This is how I die. Not fighting Viltrumites to save Earth, but in some warehouse brawl I never should have gotten involved in. I think of Mom, of Dad, of Eve and Megumi. Of all the things I'll never get to say to them. Battle Beast's arm tenses, the blade beginning its deadly arc toward my heart. And then, impossibly, a sudden shockwave of wind explodes against my face and the blade stops. Not because Battle Beast has shown mercy, but because someone has caught his wrist in mid-strike. Through my dimming vision, I see a familiar figure standing beside us, holding Battle Beast's arm with apparent ease. "I think," Megumi says, his voice colder than I've ever heard it, "that you should reconsider your current course of action." Battle Beast's eyes widen in genuine delighted surprise, not at the intervention itself, but at the fact that someone has stopped his strike. "Who are you?" he demands, releasing me to face this new threat. I collapse to the ground, gasping for air, as Megumi steps between me and Battle Beast. "I am Sukuna," he says simply. "And you're touching what is mine." The last thing I see before consciousness slips away is Megumi's form silhouetted against the warehouse lights, cursed energy swirling around him like a crimson aura as he faces the alien warrior. And despite the pain, despite my failure, I feel a strange sense of security. Because I know that whatever happens next, this guy is the one who should be afraid. The warehouse district fell silent as two titans faced each other, locked in a moment of deadly tension. Battle Beast's massive arm remained suspended in mid-strike, his wrist caught in Sukuna's grip. The alien warrior's eyes widened slightly, not in fear, but in genuine surprise that someone had managed to intercept his killing blow. Sukuna's fingers tightened around Battle Beast's wrist, cursed energy flowing through the point of contact. In that fraction of a second, as his flesh touched the alien warrior's, he activated his technique. Cleave. Battle Beast's instincts, honed across countless battlefields on innumerable worlds, screamed danger. He wrenched backward with explosive force, but not before Sukuna's technique took effect. The invisible cutting force sliced clean through flesh, bone, and armor, severing Battle Beast's hand at the wrist. For a moment, the severed appendage remained suspended in air, still clutching the pulsing blade, before both clattered to the ground in a spray of alien blood. Battle Beast stared at his stump, purple blood flowing freely from the perfectly smooth cut. Then, to Sukuna's mild surprise, the warrior threw back his head and laughed, a booming sound of genuine delight. "What manner of ability is this?" Battle Beast rumbled, examining his wound with fascination rather than concern. "Clean through armor designed to withstand plasma weapons." "Interesting." Sukuna positioned himself between the alien and Mark's prone form, his expression cold and calculating. The cursed energy around him swirled like crimson mist, responding to his focused intent. Battle Beast's mane bristled as he regarded Sukuna with newfound respect. Sukuna, was it? At last, a worthy opponent. Our battle will be legendary. Despite the confidence in his stance, Sukuna felt a flicker of wariness. Battle Beast's reputation was known even to him from Mark's stories. A warrior who traveled the universe seeking worthy challenges, who had slaughtered entire armies for sport. The rival of Thrag, the Grand Regent of the Viltrumites, the one currently hailed as the strongest in the universe. He himself was far from that level, as his soul was still only partially integrated with his body. The alien's physical capabilities far exceeded his own current limitations. This would not be a battle won through direct confrontation. It would require every trick, every technique, every ounce of tactical insight he possessed. Before Sukuna could respond, Battle Beast moved, crossing the distance between them with shocking speed for a being of his size. His remaining hand shot out, massive fingers closing around Sukuna's face before he could fully react. "Let us take this somewhere more appropriate," Battle Beast growled, his voice vibrating with anticipation. With a single powerful motion, he hurled Sukuna through the warehouse wall and followed immediately after, carrying their battle away from Mark and into the city beyond. Sukuna crashed through 3 buildings before managing to control his trajectory, cursed energy cushioning his impact as he slammed into the side of an office tower. Glass and concrete exploded outward, raining down on the street below. Civilians scattered, screaming in terror as the battle erupted in their midst. "My baby! Where's my baby?" A woman shrieked as debris crashed around her, separating her from her child. "Everyone get back!" a security guard shouted, desperately trying to establish order as chaos erupted. Battle Beast landed in the street, creating a crater in the asphalt. He reached behind his back, drawing a massive mace from his arsenal of weapons. "Show me more of your power," he demanded, swinging the weapon experimentally. "That cutting ability. I wish to experience it again." Sukuna dropped to the street, landing in a crouch. Above his head, a glowing white wheel materialized, Maharaga's wheel, spinning slowly and emitting a metallic hum that cut through the chaos of screaming civilians and car alarms. "As you wish," Sukuna replied, his voice carrying that ancient quality that had once made sorcerers tremble. He extended his hand, cursed energy gathering at his fingertips. "Dismantle." The technique shot forward, a precise line of force aimed directly at Battle Beast's throat. The alien warrior moved with uncanny speed, tilting his head just enough for the attack to miss its target, though it sliced cleanly through a lamppost behind him. The metal pole crashed down, crushing a fleeing businessman beneath its weight. "Too direct," Battle Beast observed, already charging forward. "Too predictable." The mace swung in a devastating arc. Sukuna melted into shadow at the last possible moment, the weapon passing through empty darkness to crush a parked car into scrap metal. The vehicle's gas tank ruptured, sending a fireball into the air that engulfed a nearby bus stop where terrified civilians had taken shelter. Their screams cut short as flames consumed them. Sukuna reformed behind Battle Beast, hands already moving through the motions of another technique. Sacred Flame. Fire erupted from his palm, not as an arrow this time but as a wave that engulfed the alien warrior. Battle Beast roared, not in pain but in exhilaration, as the supernatural flames licked at his fur and armor. "Yes," he bellowed, turning within the inferno to face Sukuna. "This is what I seek. True combat." With shocking disregard for the flames still clinging to his body, Battle Beast charged through the fire, his mace swinging in a horizontal arc that would have decapitated Sukuna had he not ducked beneath it. Even so, the backswing caught him in the ribs, the impact sending him crashing through the front of a department store. Glass and mannequins shattered around him as he tumbled through displays of clothing and electronics. "Oh God, there are people in there!" a woman cried from across the street, watching in horror as the storefront collapsed. Inside, shoppers who had been browsing moments before found themselves trapped in a nightmare. A young cashier, barely 20, was impaled by a shard of glass the size of a sword. Her co-worker, frozen in shock, was crushed beneath falling ceiling tiles seconds later. Reversed curse technique activated automatically within Sukuna, healing the 3 broken ribs and punctured lung before he'd even stopped moving. Still, the pain was intense, a reminder of the vast difference in physical capability between them. Civilians screamed and fled as Battle Beast stalked into the store, his massive frame silhouetted against the streetlights outside. The flames had burnt away patches of his fur, revealing scorched skin beneath, but he seemed entirely unbothered by the injury. "You heal quickly," he observed, kicking aside a broken display case. "Good. It would be disappointing if you fell too soon." Sukuna rose to his feet, the wheel above his head spinning faster now, its metallic sound intensifying. The technique was working. Maharaga's adaptation process was analyzing Battle Beast's capabilities with each exchange, each blow. But he needed more time. 10 Shadows technique, Divine Dogs. Shadow pooled at his feet, then erupted upward, forming into 2 massive canine shapes that lunged toward Battle Beast. The alien warrior met them head-on, his mace swinging through the first dog with enough force to temporarily disperse its shadowy form. The second latched onto his arm, teeth sinking into flesh. Battle Beast laughed, grabbing the Shikigami by its neck and ripping it away, taking a chunk of his own flesh with it. "Constructs of shadow," he said, crushing the dog in his massive hand until it died. "Clever, but insubstantial against true strength." Sukuna used the momentary distraction to launch another attack, this time combining techniques in a way he hadn't attempted before in this world. Dismantle, area expansion. Something similar to a domain, yet not exactly. An area where without the aid of a barrier he forces his technique, though not in the way of a true barrierless domain expansion. The technique expanded outward in a circular pattern, slicing through everything in its path: display cases, structural supports, and finally, Battle Beast himself. The alien roared as multiple cuts appeared across his body, his armor splitting in several places to reveal bloody fur beneath. The department store's remaining support columns were also sliced through, causing the upper floors to collapse in a cacophony of screams and crashing debris. A family of 4 who had been hiding in the children's clothing section were crushed instantly. An elderly security guard, who had been helping customers evacuate, was bisected at the waist, his dying eyes registering confusion more than pain. For the first time, genuine pain registered on Battle Beast's face, but it was quickly replaced by something more disturbing: increased excitement. "Yes!" he bellowed, blood spraying from his wounds as he charged forward again. "This is what I have traveled galaxies to find." His speed increased, his attacks becoming more precise, more deadly. Sukuna found himself on the defensive, using shadows to dodge, reversed cursed technique to heal, and precise applications of cursed energy to deflect what blows he could. The battle spilled back onto the street, then into neighboring buildings, then across rooftops. Everywhere they went, destruction followed: concrete pulverized, steel bent, glass shattered. A mother clutching her infant son tried to escape down an alley, only to be crushed beneath falling masonry as Battle Beast hurled Sukuna through a load-bearing wall. A school bus driver, attempting to evacuate a group of children from a nearby museum field trip, watched in horror as Battle Beast's mace, thrown with casual force, tore through the vehicle's engine block, causing it to explode in a fireball that consumed all inside. Civilian casualties mounted as structures collapsed, though Sukuna made efforts to direct the fight away from populated areas when possible. From above, the scene must have looked apocalyptic: 2 beings of incredible power carving a path of devastation through the city's eastern district. The wheel above Sukuna's head spun continuously, its glow intensifying with each exchange, each adaptation to Battle Beast's fighting style and physical capabilities. But the process was taking too long, and Sukuna was reaching his limits. A particularly vicious strike caught him off guard, Battle Beast's fist connecting with his chest with enough force to send him crashing through the roof of a parking garage. He plummeted through multiple concrete levels before slamming into the ground floor, creating a crater in the foundation. The impact crushed several vehicles, their occupants killed instantly, people who had thought themselves safe taking shelter in the solid structure. Blood filled Sukuna's mouth as he struggled to rise, reversed curse technique working overtime to repair the extensive damage. His vision blurred, focusing just in time to see Battle Beast descending through the hole he'd created, landing with earth-shaking force nearby. "You fight well," the alien warrior acknowledged, approaching with measured steps. "But you lack the raw physical power to match me. A pity. Your abilities are fascinating." Sukuna spat blood, forcing himself to his feet despite the protests of his partially healed body. The wheel above his head spun frantically now, its metallic sound almost deafening in the enclosed space. "I'm not finished yet," he said, his voice steady despite his condition. "Sukuna!" The shout came from above, and both combatants looked up to see Eve hovering at the edge of the destroyed roof, Mark beside her. The young Viltrumite looked battered but conscious, clearly healed enough by Eve's powers to rejoin the fight. "Stay back," Sukuna commanded, his voice carrying an authority neither had heard before, the voice of a king accustomed to absolute obedience. "This is not your battle." "The hell it isn't," Mark shouted back, preparing to descend. "He nearly killed me." "And he will kill you if you interfere," Sukuna replied coldly. "Stay back." Before either could respond, a new figure appeared beside them: Tsukumo, her traditional clothing fluttering in the night breeze. "You heard my master," she said, her voice carrying a chill that matched her powers. "This is not for you." With a single breath, she exhaled a cloud of freezing air that crystallized around Mark and Eve, encasing them in a shell of ice that held them immobile but unharmed. "Tsukumo." Eve's muffled voice came through the ice. "What are you doing?" "Protecting you," she replied simply, before turning her attention to the battle below. Battle Beast had watched this exchange with mild interest, but his focus remained on Sukuna. "Your companions wish to join our dance," he observed. "Admirable, but unnecessary. This is between warriors." "Agreed," Sukuna replied as he rose, and mildly stretched his neck, gathering his strength for what he knew must come next. The battle resumed with renewed intensity, both combatants pushing beyond normal limits. Sukuna utilized every technique at his disposal: dismantle, cleave, news lightning, sacred flame, in combinations designed to keep Battle Beast off balance. But the alien warrior was relentless, shrugging off injuries that would have killed lesser beings instantly, adapting his own fighting style to counter Sukuna's techniques with frightening speed. A group of paramedics, attempting to reach victims trapped in earlier devastation, were caught in the crossfire. News lightning, deflected by Battle Beast's mace, struck their ambulance, electrocuting all inside. Their deaths were mercifully quick compared to those still trapped in collapsed buildings, slowly suffocating under tons of concrete and steel. By now, others had arrived at the scene. Nolan Grayson hovered in the air nearby, watching the battle with intense focus but making no move to intervene. He had received the same command from Sukuna, to stay back, to not interfere, and despite his enormous power, he respected the warrior's right to his own battle. The fight had reached a critical point. Sukuna, despite his remarkable healing abilities, was approaching his limits. Battle Beast, though wounded in dozens of places, showed no signs of fatigue or weakness. In a desperate gambit, Sukuna gathered his remaining cursed energy, focusing it into a single concentrated attack. Sacred Flame, Arrow. The fiery projectile shot from his palm with blinding speed, its trajectory perfectly calculated to strike Battle Beast's chest. The alien warrior saw it coming, but perhaps out of curiosity or arrogance, made no attempt to dodge. The arrow struck him directly in the center of his chest, erupting into an inferno that engulfed his upper body. For a moment, it seemed the attack might have succeeded where others had failed. Then Battle Beast laughed, the sound echoing through the flames that surrounded him. "Fire that burns hot as the very stars themselves," he rumbled, clearly impressed despite himself. A worthy technique. With terrifying determination, he charged through the flames, his mace raised for a killing blow. The weapon connected with Sukuna's left side with immense force, shattering bone and tearing flesh. Sukuna's arm was torn completely from his body, blood spraying in an arc as he was blasted backward, crashing through yet another wall and into an open area beyond. The central plaza of a shopping complex, mercifully evacuated during the battle. He landed in a broken heap, his consciousness flickering as reversed curse techniques struggled to cope with the massive trauma. The severed arm lay several meters away, cursed energy still swirling around it like dying embers. Battle Beast landed at the edge of the new crater, watching as Sukuna somehow forced himself to rise once more, blood pouring from the ragged wound where his arm had been. The wheel above Sukuna's head had reached a fever pitch of rotation, its glow now blindingly bright, its metallic sound resonating through the destroyed plaza. "Enough," Sukuna said, his voice somehow steady despite his grievous injuries. "I have what I need." With his remaining hand, he made a gesture of summoning, his blood spattering the ground in a crimson arc. 10 Shadows Technique, 8th Form Divine General Maharaga. The air behind him shimmered, then tore open as a massive figure emerged, its muscular form dwarfing even Battle Beast's impressive physique. The same wheel that had been spinning above Sukuna's head now adorned Maharaga's, and upon its hand, it held an enormous executioner's blade. Battle Beast's eyes widened in genuine appreciation. "Another construct? This one seems more substantial." "Not a construct," Sukuna corrected, blood still flowing from his wound despite his healing abilities. "A divine general. My divine general." He turned slightly, addressing the massive Shikigami. "Maharaga, Aid me in this battle in the way you deem best fit. Destroy this opponent. What happened next occurred so quickly that even those with enhanced perception barely registered the movement. Maharaga, rather than attacking Battle Beast, moved with impossible speed, not toward the alien warrior, but toward Sukuna himself. The executioner's blade flashed once in the dying sunlight, then plunged forward, piercing through Sukuna's back and erupting from his chest in a spray of blood and shattered bone. Time seemed to freeze as the blade protruded from Sukuna's chest, dripping with his blood. His eyes widened in genuine shock, an expression rarely seen on his face. From above, having broken away from their prison earlier, Eve and Mark screamed in horror as they drew closer. Megumi! No! The wheel above Maharaga's head continued to spin, casting its cold light over the scene as Sukuna's blood pooled on the ground beneath him, spreading in a widening circle of crimson. Maharaga ripped out the blade as Sukuna stumbled. The last thing the king saw before he fell face first into his own blood was a murderous expression on Battle Beast's face. Soon after there was only darkness. Eve's scream tore through the air as she descended, like a comet, a streak of pink energy cutting through the smoke-filled air to land beside Sukuna's fallen form. The impact of her landing cracked the already damaged concrete, sending ripples through the devastated plaza. No, 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 she chanted, her voice breaking as she gathered him into her arms, cradling his head in her lap. Her hands trembled violently as they moved across his body, searching for any sign that the wound wasn't as fatal as it appeared. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. The executioner's blade had vanished, but the wound remained, a gaping hole through his chest, blood pooling beneath him in an ever-widening circle. The blood spread across the broken concrete, seeping into cracks. Megumi, please, she whispered, tears streaming down her face as she pressed her hands to the wound, pink energy flowing from her fingertips in a desperate attempt to repair the damage. Please don't leave me. Not now. Not when we finally got together. Not when I finally found someone who understands me, who sees me for who I really am. His eyes remained open but unfocused, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth in a thin, steady stream. The wheel that had spun above his head throughout the battle had disappeared, leaving only the massive form of Maharaga standing impassively nearby, its own wheel still spinning with that eerie metallic sound that seemed to cut through the chaos around them. You can't die, Eve insisted, her voice rising in pitch as her powers surged, molecules around them beginning to destabilize as her control wavered. Small objects, pieces of debris, dust, fragments of glass, began to float upward as her powers began to get out of control. I won't let you die. Do you hear me? I won't. We have too much left to do together. Too much life to live. Mark landed beside her, his face pale with shock, his costume torn and bloodied from his earlier encounter with Battle Beast. He himself was in disbelief. His best friend, the one he considered his brother, was dead. Yet as he was taught by him, he knew he would be a failure of both friend and student to lose his cool right now. He had to be strong, had to think clearly, had to remember the lessons in control that Sukuna had drilled into him. Eve, I don't think he began, his voice catching in his throat as he took in the full extent of Sukuna's injury. Shut up, she snarled, not looking away from Sukuna's face, her fingers desperately tracing over his features as if memorizing them. He's not going to die. He can't. He's mine. Mine. The last word emerged as a scream, and with it, something seemed to break inside her. Pink energy erupted from her body in pulsating waves, the ground beneath them cracking as her powers surged beyond their normal constraints. The concrete split open in jagged lines radiating outward from where she knelt, as if the earth itself was responding to her grief. Mark backed away, eyes wide with alarm as he felt the air around them begin to vibrate with molecular instability. Eve, you need to calm down. Calm down. She looked up at him, and Mark recoiled at the sight of her eyes, no longer merely glowing pink but blazing with unnatural light that seemed to pierce through him. The intensity of her gaze was physically painful, like staring directly into a sun that had somehow turned magenta. He's dying. The only person who ever truly saw me, who understood me, who belonged to me. And you want me to calm down? How dare you? Her voice carried a new quality, an echo that seemed to vibrate through the very molecules of the air. He was the only one who accepted me completely, she continued, her voice breaking with emotion. Not just my powers, not just my brain, but all of me, even the parts one tried to hide from everyone else. He knew I watched him, that I studied him, that I wanted to understand everything about him, and he didn't run. He didn't think I was crazy. He thought I was worthy. Her attention returned to Sukuna, her hands trembling as she stroked his face, leaving trails in the blood and dust that marred his features. Wake up, she pleaded, her voice cracking as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Please wake up. I need you. I need you more than anything. More than air. More than life itself. Please, Megumi. Please don't leave me alone again. Battle Beast watched from a distance, his head tilted in curiosity at this display of emotion. His own wounds, the severed hand, the multiple cuts across his body, the burns from Sukuna's flame, seemed forgotten as he observed the scene with the interest of a being who had witnessed countless deaths across innumerable worlds. The warrior has fallen, he observed, a pity. He fought well. Better than most I have encountered in recent centuries. Eve's head snapped up at his words, her expression contorting with a rage so pure, so primal, that it transformed her features into something barely recognizable as human. Her skin seemed to glow from within, pink energy suffusing every cell of her body. You, she hissed, rising slowly to her feet. Sukuna's body gently lowered to the ground with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with the violence emanating from her. You did this. The pink energy surrounding her intensified, becoming almost blinding in its brilliance. Her feet lifted from the ground as she began to float, her hair whipping around her face in a wind that seemed to affect nothing else in the vicinity. The air around her shimmered as molecules responded to her unconscious commands, reality itself seeming to warp in response to her grief and fury. Eve. Mark called out in alarm, sensing the dangerous shift in her powers, a fundamental change in how her abilities were manifesting. Don't do this. You can't beat him. He's too strong, he'll kill you too. But Eve wasn't listening. Something had truly changed within her. Internal limiters, subconsciously maintained her entire life, were crumbling under the weight of her despair and rage. The mental barriers that had always regulated her molecular manipulation, keeping it within safe parameters, were dissolving like sugar in boiling water. A world without him, she whispered, her voice eerily calm yet somehow still echoing despite the chaos swirling around her, doesn't deserve to exist. The pink energy expanded outward in a shockwave that rippled through the devastated landscape, pulverizing concrete and warping steel wherever it touched. The few remaining intact windows for blocks around shattered simultaneously, raining glass down on the streets below. Battle Beast narrowed his eyes, recognizing the threat, and moved with surprising speed to avoid the blast, his massive form blurring as he leapt clear of the energy wave. If I can't have him, Eve continued, rising higher into the air, her form beginning to lose definition as her body became akin to pure living energy, then no one gets to be happy. No one gets to live. Buildings began to crumble as she extended her powers. A nearby office tower groaned, its structural integrity compromised as the very atoms that composed it began to vibrate at Eve's will. The very air seemed to vibrate with the force of her grief, creating a high-pitched whine that made those in the vicinity cover their ears in pain. Eve, stop! Mark shouted, flying up to try to reach her, pushing against the waves of energy that buffeted him like a physical force. This isn't what Megumi would want. He wouldn't want you to destroy everything in his name. You don't know what he would want, she screamed back, a pulse of energy knocking Mark backward with enough force to send him crashing through a partially collapsed wall. None of you knew him like I did. None of you saw him like I did. None of you loved him like I did. Her voice rose to an almost inhuman pitch, the sound distorting as it got out of her mouth. He was mine. Mine to watch, mine to study, mine to love. And now he's gone, and it's all your fault. This last accusation seemed directed at the world itself, at the universe that had allowed Sukuna to be taken from her. Her attention turned to Maharaga, still standing motionless beside Sukuna's body, Its will continuing its eerie rotation. And you, she snarled, her face contorting with renewed rage, his own creation. You betrayed him. You were supposed to protect him, to fight for him, and instead you killed him. She lashed out with a concentrated beam of energy, focusing all her power into a single devastating attack attempting to disintegrate the divine general at the molecular level. The beam struck Maharaga directly in the center of its massive chest, the impact creating a blinding flash of light and a concussive force that shook the ground. But to Eve's shock and mounting fury, when the light faded, Maharaga stood unharmed. The energy had dissipated harmlessly against the Shikigami's body, the wheel above its head spinning faster as if in response to the attack, adapting to it in real time. "Why won't you die?" she screamed, redoubling her attack, pouring more of her power into the beam until it widened to engulf Maharaga completely. "Why won't everything just die?" Her voice cracked with the force of her desperation, the sound carrying for miles as her powers continued to escalate beyond anything she had ever manifested before. Her form was now a towering pillar of pink light visible across the city, a beacon of destruction and despair that seemed to reach toward the heavens themselves. Civilians who had survived the initial battle now fled in renewed terror as buildings began to collapse under the strain of her rage. Emergency vehicles attempting to reach the area found roads buckled and impassable, the very infrastructure of the city warping under Eve's unconscious influence. "A universe without him," she declared, her voice amplified by her powers until it resonated through the bones of everyone within miles, "has no right to continue. If I can't have my happiness, I'll erase everything. Every molecule, every atom, every particle. I'll tear it all apart until nothing remains but darkness." Her power continued to grow and grow and grow, the pink energy now pulsing with a rhythm like a heartbeat, her heartbeat, accelerated by grief and rage. "I studied him for months," she continued, her voice carrying that eerie resonance that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the mind. "I catalogued every movement, every expression, every word. I calculated the molecular composition of his skin, the precise rhythm of his heartbeat, the exact shade of his eyes. I knew him better than anyone ever could. And now he's gone, and the world keeps turning as if he never existed." As her rage reached its peak, something unexpected happened. A presence materialized behind her, warm, solid, and unmistakably familiar. Arms wrapped around her from behind. Not two but four, embracing her with gentle strength that somehow contained her despite the maelstrom of power she had become. Eve froze, her attack faltering as shock coursed through her system like an electric current. The pink energy surrounding her flickered, momentarily dimming as her concentration broke. "That's enough, Eve," a voice murmured in her ear, Sukuna's voice, but different somehow. Deeper, more resonant, carrying an authority that seemed so him. It was a voice that commanded not just attention but obedience, that spoke with the weight of divine right behind each word. "This world may be flawed," the voice continued, "but it's still ours. And I'm not ready to let it end just yet." Slowly, disbelievingly, she turned within the embrace, her powers receding enough to allow her to perceive clearly. The being holding her was Sukuna, yet transformed in ways that defied her understanding. His body was whole but changed, taller, more powerfully built, with intricate patterns covering his skin like living tattoos, more evident and clearer than his original ones. Most striking were his eyes, not two but four, arranged in two vertical pairs on his face, all gazing at her with warmth. They seemed to see through her, past her physical form to her very soul. "You're alive," she whispered, her voice small and fragile with hope. "More than alive," he replied, his four arms still holding her securely. "Reborn." As Eve stared in wonder, Sukuna glanced down at his own transformed body, a flicker of surprise and satisfaction crossing his features. His movements carried a new fluidity, a perfect integration of power and control that made his previous form seem like a rough draft by comparison. "Maharaga didn't betray me," he explained, "it saved me. In its wisdom, it recognized that my soul and body were still not fully integrated, that at my current strength, I could never defeat Battle Beast." He flexed his four arms experimentally, cursed energy swirling around them with newfound intensity, the crimson aura deeper and more vibrant than before. "So it forced the integration, completing what began months ago when I first awakened my abilities. My soul and body are now in perfect balance. What was fractured is whole, what was divided is united." Eve's powers began to recede further, the pink glow dimming as her shock and relief overwhelmed her rage. The buildings around them stopped crumbling, the air ceased its vibration, and reality itself seemed to stabilize in response to her calming emotions. "You're different," she managed, reaching up to touch his face with trembling fingers, tracing the markings that adorned his skin. "Not just physically, but everything about you feels different. More complete." "I am what I was always meant to be," Sukuna replied. He leaned down, capturing her lips in a kiss that sent waves of energy cascading through her body, a sensation that went beyond physical pleasure to something more fundamental, as if her very molecules were singing in response to his touch. Eve felt her own form changing in response, her molecules rearranging subtly, growing taller, stronger, her body adapting to complement his transformed state. The changes weren't just superficial. She could feel her powers expanding, deepening, becoming more integrated with her consciousness. When they separated, Eve looked down at herself in wonder. Her costume remained intact, still covering her entire body, but she had evolved. She felt stronger, more stable, more in control of her molecular manipulation than she had ever been before. "What did you do to me?" she asked, not in accusation but in amazement. "I didn't do anything," Sukuna replied, his expression softening as he gazed at her. "Your powers responded to mine, your powers perhaps recognizing something kindred in my transformation." Sukuna gazed around at the devastation, then up at the sky, his expression one of wonder as he experienced the world through his transformed senses. "Everything is so clear now," he murmured, his voice carrying a note of genuine awe. "Every sound, every scent, every particle of energy in the air. I can feel the world in ways I never could before." He extended one hand, cursed energy flowing around it with effortless precision. "Maharaga didn't just integrate my soul, it adapted my very essence, incorporating what it learned from Battle Beast. My atoms are now smart atoms, like those of a Viltrumite, responding to my will, enhancing my strength and durability beyond even what I previously imagined. The world is clear to me now." His attention turned to Battle Beast, who had been watching this transformation with growing excitement. His remaining hand flexed eagerly, and a grin spread across his bestial features, the expression of a predator scenting worthy prey. "At last," Battle Beast rumbled, his fangs bared in a savage grin that contained no fear, only anticipation. "A true test of my skills. Show me what you've become." Sukuna descended slowly until he hovered only a bit above Battle Beast, his four arms relaxed at his sides but cursed energy swirling around him. The two warriors regarded each other with mutual respect, apex predators recognizing each other's lethal potential. "Before, I was merely playing at being what I was," Sukuna stated, "a shadow of my former self, trapped between worlds, between identities. Now I am more than I ever was." His four eyes narrowed slightly, studying Battle Beast. "The question, Beast, is whether you are prepared to face the consequences of what you've awakened. Few who have roused my true nature have lived to speak of it." Battle Beast's grin widened, bloodlust and joy mingling in his expression as he rolled his massive shoulders, loosening muscles in preparation for combat. "I have traveled across galaxies seeking worthy opponents," he declared, his voice rumbling with anticipation. "I have slaughtered armies and challenged gods, fought the champions of 1,000 worlds and found them wanting. There is no consequence I fear more than the emptiness of victory without struggle, the hollow triumph over unworthy foes." He retrieved his mace from the rubble, twirling it with ease despite missing a hand, it not affecting the balance of his body at all. "Come then, Sukuna. Show me the full extent of your rebirth. Let us write a battle in blood and bone that will be remembered across the stars." Sukuna's lips curved into a smile that hadn't been seen in this world before, the smile of a predator confident in its absolute dominance, of a king surveying his domain. It was an expression that had once made armies tremble, that had heralded the fall of dynasties. "As you wish," he replied, cursed energy gathering around his four hands. "But remember, Beast, you asked for this. When the pain becomes too much to bear, when you beg for the mercy of death, remember that this was your choice." Above, Eve and Mark watched in awe, joined now by Nolan and Arama, carried by Nolan, who hovered nearby, all of them sensing that they were about to witness something unprecedented. Battle Beast crouched, muscles tensing for his charge. "Our battle will be glorious," he roared, the sound echoing across the devastated landscape. Sukuna's 4 eyes narrowed. "Our battle will be brief," he replied, his voice carrying absolute certainty. And with that, they moved towards each other, Battle Beast jumping towards Sukuna, who charged downward with flight. The King of Curses and the Beast of the Stars, meeting in a combat that would be remembered long after the dust had settled and the blood had dried. The air crackled with energy as Sukuna and Battle Beast collided at the center of the devastated plaza. The impact generated a shockwave that pulverized the remaining concrete, sending debris flying in all directions and forcing the onlookers to shield themselves. Battle Beast's mace swung in a devastating arc, its spiked head trailing blue energy as it cut through the air. Sukuna, moving with newfound speed that matched the alien warriors, caught the weapon between 2 of his 4 hands, the impact sending tremors through his transformed body. "Interesting," Sukuna observed, his 4 eyes narrowing as he analyzed the weapon. "Your mace channels energy with technology. Primitive, but effective." Battle Beast's response was a savage grin as he twisted the weapon, attempting to wrench it free. "A warrior's tools are extensions of his will. Mine has tasted the blood of champions across 100 worlds." "Then allow me to introduce it to something new," Sukuna replied. Cursed energy flowed from his hands into the mace, traveling up its length to Battle Beast's grip. The alien warrior's eyes widened as the energy reached him, attempting to slice through his flesh from within. With a roar of pain and surprise, Battle Beast released the weapon, leaping backward to create distance. Blood dripped from his remaining hand where the cursed energy had begun to cut through his palm. "Dismantle," Sukuna explained casually, tossing the mace aside. "My energy can cut through anything it touches, from the outside or within." Battle Beast flexed his injured hand, his expression one of fascination rather than fear. A worthy technique. But a true warrior relies on more than a single approach. He charged forward again, this time empty-handed but moving with even greater speed. His massive body blurred as he closed the distance, feinting left before striking with a devastating right hook aimed at Sukuna's head. Sukuna didn't dodge. Instead, he met the punch directly with one of his own, their fists colliding with enough force to create a visible distortion in the air around them. The ground beneath their feet cracked further, spiderweb fissures racing outward from the point of impact. For the first time, Battle Beast's expression registered surprise. His punch, which had shattered mountains and moons, even planets, had been matched perfectly. "Impossible," he muttered, his eyes narrowing. "Your strength has evolved," Sukuna finished for him. "My atoms now respond to my will, much like a Viltrumite's, but with a crucial difference." Before Battle Beast could respond, Sukuna unleashed a flurry of strikes with all 4 arms, each moving with precision that belied their devastating power. The alien warrior blocked what he could, his forearms taking impacts that would have killed anyone else with their mere wind pressure, but several blows still broke through his defense. Blood sprayed from Battle Beast's muzzle as Sukuna's fist connected with his jaw, sending him staggering backward. Another strike to his ribs produced a sickening crack, and a third to his knee nearly buckled the joint. Battle Beast recovered quickly, his combat experience evident in how swiftly he adapted his stance to compensate for his injuries. He wiped blood from his muzzle, his eyes gleaming with renewed excitement. "At last," he growled, "a challenge worthy of my full attention." He reached behind his back, drawing a curved blade that hummed with the same blue energy as his mace. "Let us see if your new form can withstand Thoktian steel." The blade moved in a blur as Battle Beast attacked again, the weapon trailing energy that seemed to cut through the very air itself. Sukuna weaved between the strikes, his 4 eyes tracking the blade's path with perfect clarity. When he saw an opening, he struck, not at Battle Beast, but at the space between them. "Dismantle." The air itself seemed to split, an invisible force racing toward Battle Beast. The alien warrior sensed the danger and attempted to dodge, but the technique caught his side, opening a deep gash that immediately began to pour purple blood. Battle Beast glanced down at the wound, then back at Sukuna, his expression calculating. "You cut without touching. A technique that bypasses conventional defense." "One of many," Sukuna replied, his 4 arms moving in complex patterns as he gathered cursed energy. Something in Sukuna's stance, in the way the air began to warp around him, triggered Battle Beast's primal survival instincts. In all his centuries of combat across countless worlds, he had developed an almost supernatural ability to sense lethal intent. Two of Sukuna's hands made an Enmeton sign. What he sensed now sent a chill through his battle-hardened body. Death. Absolute, unavoidable death if he remained within range of whatever Sukuna was preparing. Domain EXP-Sukuna began, but before he could complete the utterance, Battle Beast was already moving. With explosive speed, the alien warrior launched himself backward, putting hundreds upon hundreds of meters between them in a single bound. The concrete shattered beneath his feet from the force of his departure, creating a small crater where he had stood. If I had remained there one moment longer, I would have ceased to exist, Battle Beast thought, his warrior's instincts screaming warnings louder than he had ever experienced. Whatever technique he was about to unleash, it would have meant certain death. Sukuna's eyes widened slightly in surprise, the domain he had been about to manifest dissipating as his concentration was broken by Battle Beast's unexpected retreat. Impressive instincts, Sukuna acknowledged, his forearms lowering slightly. Few beings can sense the danger of my domain expansion before it manifests. Battle Beast stood at the far end of the devastated plaza, his chest heaving not from exertion but from the primal fear he had just experienced, a sensation foreign to a warrior who had faced the most terrifying opponents the universe had to offer. Your technique, Battle Beast called across the distance. It carries the scent of annihilation. A weapon that leaves no possibility of survival. Perceptive, Sukuna replied, a cold smile spreading across his face. My domain expansion creates a space where my techniques are guaranteed to hit, with no possibility of evasion. Within that domain, cleave would adjust to your durability, ensuring a fatal cut regardless of your physical resilience. Sukuna explained to strengthen his technique. Battle Beast's eyes narrowed, reassessing his opponent with newfound wariness. A technique that bypasses all defense. Truly, you are a worthy adversary. Instead of charging back into close combat, Battle Beast reached behind his back, producing a compact device that expanded into what appeared to be a high-tech bow. A blue energy arrow materialized as he drew back the string, the projectile humming with the same power as his other weapons. Let us see how you fare against attacks from a distance, he called, releasing the arrow with perfect form. The energy projectile streaked towards Sukuna with incredible speed, leaving a trail of blue light in its wake. Rather than dodge, Sukuna raised one hand, cursed energy forming a barrier before him. The arrow struck the barrier and detonated, creating an explosion that momentarily obscured Sukuna from view. When the smoke cleared, he stood unharmed, though the ground around him had been cratered by the blast. Ranged combat, Sukuna observed, is a sound strategy against an opponent whose close-quarters techniques proved lethal. But he vanished from sight, reappearing instantly behind Battle Beast, his newfound speed allowing for movement that bordered on teleportation. It assumes your opponent is limited to the same constraints. Battle Beast's instincts saved him once again. He spun with shocking speed, his blade intercepting Sukuna's strike mere millimeters from his spine. The clash of cursed energy against the blue energy of the alien weapon created a localized shockwave that shattered nearby debris. Your speed has increased dramatically, Battle Beast noted, disengaging to create distance once more. Your transformation has enhanced all aspects of your being. Indeed, Sukuna confirmed, his forearms moving in a complex pattern as he gathered cursed energy once more. And you have yet to witness the full extent of my capabilities. He extended all four hands, cursed energy gathering at his fingertips. Sacred flame. Instead of a single arrow, 4 streams of supernatural fire erupted from his hands, converging on Battle Beast from different angles. The alien warrior attempted to dodge, but the flames adjusted their trajectory, tracking him with unnatural precision. When they struck, the effect was catastrophic. The sacred flame engulfed Battle Beast completely, burning with an intensity that melted the asphalt beneath his feet. The flames weren't just hot, they were conceptual, burning the very essence of their target rather than merely its physical form. Battle Beast roared in genuine pain for the first time in the battle, his fur charring and his armor beginning to melt under the supernatural heat. With a desperate swing of his blade, he created a shockwave that temporarily dispersed the flames, giving him a moment to recover. Fire that burns the soul itself, he gasped, his breathing labored. Truly magnificent. Sukuna didn't allow him time to recuperate. He closed the distance in an instant, all four arms moving in a coordinated attack that left no angle for defense. Battle Beast blocked what he could, but for each strike he stopped, two more connected. The alien warrior's legendary durability was being pushed to its limits. Bones cracked under the relentless assault, armor splintered, and blood flowed freely from dozens of wounds. Yet still, Battle Beast fought on, his every movement speaking to centuries of combat experience. Each time Sukuna believed he had gained the upper hand, the alien warrior would reveal another technique, another weapon, another strategy. From a hidden compartment in his armor, Battle Beast produced a pair of energy daggers, their edges glowing with the same blue light as his other weapons. These he wielded with surprising dexterity despite his injuries, forcing Sukuna to adjust his approach. Your arsenal seems endless, Sukuna observed, evading a slash that would have opened his throat. A warrior must be prepared for any challenge, Battle Beast replied, his movements becoming more fluid as he found his rhythm with the new weapons. Reliance on a single approach leads to defeat. The daggers hummed as they cut through the air, leaving trails of energy that lingered for seconds after each swing. When one managed to graze Sukuna's arm, he felt a burning sensation unlike conventional wounds. The energy was attempting to disrupt his cursed energy pathways. Interesting, Sukuna thought, analyzing the sensation. The weapons are designed to target energy systems, likely effective against various powered beings across the galaxy. Your weapons are designed to disrupt energy flow, he stated, shifting his strategy to keep more distance. Clever, but ultimately futile against me. He extended one hand, focusing cursed energy into a precise point. Dismantle. The technique shot forward, invisible but devastating. Battle Beast attempted to block with one of his daggers, but the cursed energy sliced through the weapon as if it were paper, continuing on to cut deeply into his forearm. The alien warrior grunted in pain but didn't retreat. Instead, he hurled his remaining dagger directly at Sukuna's face, forcing him to dodge and creating an opening for a follow-up attack. Battle Beast capitalized immediately, closing the distance and delivering a powerful headbutt that connected solidly with Sukuna's face. The impact was enough to momentarily daze even his enhanced form, blood trickling from his nose as he staggered backward. First blood from your new form, Battle Beast observed with satisfaction. A worthy achievement. Sukuna wiped the blood away, his four eyes narrowing. Still, gaze upon your form, the king began as he gestured with his hand at Battle Beast's injuries. All that for a simple bleeding nose. Worth it, Battle Beast stated with a teeth-filled grin. The patterns on Sukuna's skin began to glow with an inner light, cursed energy flowing through the markings like blood through veins. The air around him seemed to grow heavier, denser, as if reality itself was being compressed by his power. You fought well, Beast, Sukuna acknowledged suddenly, his voice taking on a resonant quality that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the mind. Few have pushed me to access my full potential. For that, you have my respect. He raised all four arms, the cursed energy surrounding them intensifying until it was almost blinding. But this battle ends now. Battle Beast sensed the shift in power, his warrior's instincts warning him of imminent danger. Yet instead of retreating, he grinned, baring his blood-stained fangs in a display of pure battle lust. Show me your true power, he roared, bracing himself for whatever was to come. Let this be a death worthy of song. Sukuna's response was another technique he hadn't used since his rebirth, not even since his awakening within the brat. Dismantle, maximum. The technique manifested not as a single cutting force, but as thousands invisible lines that crisscrossed the entire battlefield in a three-dimensional grid of destruction. Unlike his domain, which guaranteed hits, this could be dodged, but that was easier said than done. Battle Beast, of course, still attempted to dodge, his legendary reflexes pushing his battered body to its absolute limit. He managed to avoid some of the cutting lines, but the sheer number made complete evasion impossible. The effect was catastrophic. Hundreds of cuts appeared across Battle Beast's body simultaneously, each deeper and more precise than conventional weapons could achieve. Armor shattered, flesh parted, and even bone was sliced through with surgical precision. Purple blood erupted from the alien warrior's body in a fine mist as the technique ran its course, leaving him standing in a pool of his own vital fluids. For a moment, he remained upright through sheer force of will, his eyes still burning with the joy of combat despite his grievous injuries. Then, slowly, he collapsed to his knees, his remaining weapons falling from nerveless fingers. "Magnificent," he gasped, blood bubbling from his lips with each word. "Truly, magnificent." Sukuna approached the fallen warrior, his 4 eyes studying Battle Beast with a mixture of respect and clinical assessment. The alien's injuries were beyond recovery. Even his legendary constitution couldn't survive such comprehensive damage. "You fought well," Sukuna acknowledged, standing before the kneeling warrior. "Few have ever pushed me to such lengths." Battle Beast looked up, meeting Sukuna's gaze without fear. "And you have given me what I sought for centuries. A battle worthy of my skills. A defeat without dishonor." Blood continued to pool beneath him, his life ebbing away with each passing second. Yet his expression remained one of satisfaction rather than despair. "I have one request," Battle Beast managed, his voice growing weaker. "Grant me a warrior's death. Clean. Final. By your hand." Sukuna considered the request, then nodded. In this moment, he recognized Battle Beast not as an enemy, but as a worthy opponent, one deserving of respect in his final moments. "Very well," he said, gathering cursed energy into his hand. "Few have earned such consideration from me. Consider it recognition of your skill." Battle Beast straightened as much as his broken body would allow, presenting his chest. "My name is Thok, son of Zor. Remember it." "I will remember," Sukuna promised, his hand poised for the final strike. "Your name will not be forgotten, Thok, son of Zor." With perfect precision, Sukuna delivered a clean, merciful death, his hand passing through Battle Beast's chest to crush his heart instantly. The alien warrior's eyes remained open, a smile of satisfaction on his face as life left his body. As Battle Beast Thok collapsed forward, Sukuna caught him, lowering his massive form to the ground with a respect few would have expected from the King of Curses. "Rest well, warrior," Sukuna said quietly. "Your quest has ended." He straightened, turning to face the observers who had watched the combat from a safe distance. Eve descended immediately, rushing to his side with a mixture of awe and concern on her face. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her eyes scanning his transformed body for injuries. "Nothing significant," Sukuna replied, the glow fading from the markings on his skin as he relaxed from his combat stance. He was a worthy opponent. Mark landed nearby, his expression a mixture of relief and disbelief as he surveyed the devastation around them. "That was... I don't even have words for what that was." Nolan descended more cautiously, Aroma still in his arms. His expression was one of careful assessment as he studied Sukuna's transformed state. "You've changed," he observed simply, setting Aroma down gently. "More than just physically." "Yes," Sukuna agreed, flexing his 4 arms experimentally. "The integration is complete now. Body and soul in perfect harmony." Aroma approached, bowing deeply before him. "Sukuna-sama," she said, her voice carrying a note of reverence. "You have returned to your true glory." Sukuna nodded in acknowledgement, then turned his attention to the fallen form of Battle Beast. "He deserves a proper burial. By warrior's custom." "I'll handle it," Nolan offered, surprising everyone with the gesture. "I recognize his kind. There are specific rites that should be observed." Sukuna studied Nolan for a moment, then nodded. "Very well." As Nolan moved to collect Battle Beast's body, Sukuna turned his attention to the city around them. The devastation was extensive, multiple blocks reduced to rubble, infrastructure destroyed, casualties likely in the hundreds if not thousands. "The city has suffered greatly," he observed, his 4 eyes taking in the full scope of destruction. "This battle has cost many innocent lives." "It wasn't your fault," Eve said quickly, placing a hand on one of his arms. "Battle Beast attacked first. You were just defending yourself, defending all of us." As emergency vehicles began to approach the scene, sirens wailing in the distance, Sukuna's transformation he understood remained stable. His 4 arms, marked skin, and extra eyes now apparently permanent features of his new form. He will need to test out later whether he can change back. But for now that was an unimportant matter, for truly the King of Curses had returned, his glory once more realized. "We should leave before authorities arrive," Sukuna said, his 4 eyes scanning the approaching emergency vehicles. "There will be questions, ones I am not in the mood to answer." But as he turned to depart, something strange caught his attention. A subtle vibration in the air, a distortion in the fabric of reality that his heightened senses could perceive but not immediately identify. "Wait," he commanded, raising one hand. "Something's wrong." The others paused, looking around in confusion. "I don't see anything," Mark said, scanning the area. "It's not something to see," Sukuna replied, his 4 eyes narrowing. "It's something to feel. The world itself is shifting." Eve's curiosity immediately engaged. "What do you mean? Are you detecting some kind of dimensional anomaly?" Before Sukuna could respond, the distortion intensified. The air began to waver, like heat rising from hot asphalt, but across the entire visible spectrum. Buildings in the distance seemed to bend and twist, their outlines becoming fluid rather than solid. "What the hell?" Mark whispered, now able to perceive the effect as it strengthened. Nolan set Battle Beast's body down carefully, his expression hardening with concern. "This isn't natural. Something is happening to the very fabric of reality." The distortion continued to intensify, spreading across the sky like ripples in a pond. The blue expanse above them began to take on a reflective quality, as if the sky itself had become a vast mirror. "Sukuna-sama," Arama whispered, moving closer to her master, her voice tight with apprehension. "This feeling, it's not of this world." "No," Sukuna agreed, his 4 eyes fixed on the distorting sky. "It's not." With a sound like shattering glass magnified 1,000-fold, the sky cracked. Fissures spread across the mirrored surface, fragmenting the reflection of the world below into countless shards. Then, with a final catastrophic crack, the sky broke apart completely. The fragments dissolved into nothingness, revealing swirling green light behind them. The emerald radiance poured through the broken sky, washing over the city in pulsating waves that seemed to bend and twist everything they touched. "Everyone down!" Sukuna shouted, pulling Eve and Arama against him protectively as the green light enveloped them all. And then there was only the light, consuming everything in its path, erasing the boundaries between what was and what would be. Earlier, in a reinforced cell deep beneath the Global Defense Agency headquarters, Angstrom Levy thrashed against his restraints. His skin glistened with sweat, his eyes darting wildly as if tracking unseen horrors. "No, no, no," he muttered, his voice hoarse from hours of screaming. "It's happening. He's changing, evolving, becoming what he was always meant to be." The monitoring equipment surrounding his bed recorded his elevated heart rate, his spiking brain activity, the strange dimensional energy fluctuations that emanated from his body in waves. Through the observation window, 2 GDA scientists watched with clinical detachment, making notes on tablets as they observed their subjects' deterioration. "Subjects' episodes are increasing in frequency and intensity," Dr. Wilson, the older researcher, noted. "This is the 3rd major event in the past hour." "Stedman wants a full report by morning," Dr. Chen replied, adjusting her glasses. "He thinks there might be a connection between Levy's condition and the battle happening downtown." "You mean the one with that 4-armed guy?" Wilson asked. "The footage is all over social media already. Some kind of monster fight in the business district." "That's the one," Chen confirmed. "Stedman thinks Levy's dimensional abilities might be reacting to whatever's happening there." Inside the cell, Levy's consciousness was far from his physical body. His mind floated through the multiverse, tethered to countless alternate versions of himself, experiencing their realities in disjointed fragments. And in that moment, across the dimensional barrier, he felt it, a surge of power so distinctive, so terrifying, that it sent shivers through every iteration of Angstrom Levy across the multiverse. "Sukuna," he whispered, the name itself seeming to draw blood from his lips. "The King of Curses. He's awakened. Fully awakened." In his mind's eye, He saw it, the transformation, the 4 arms, the marked skin, the multiple eyes. The true form of the demon who had haunted his dimensional visions for weeks. No, 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 Levi repeated, his restraints creaking as he strained against them. Not here. Not in my world. The monitors began to beat more rapidly as his heart rate accelerated, his blood pressure spiking to dangerous levels. He's going into distress, Chen said, reaching for the emergency button. Wait, Wilson cautioned, grabbing her wrist. Stedman's orders were explicit. No intervention unless his vitals indicate imminent death. He wants to see how far these episodes go. This is inhumane, Chen protested, pulling her hand away. Look at him. He's suffering. Science isn't always pretty, Wilson replied coldly. Besides, after what he tried to do with those summoning rituals, he's lucky he's not in a regular prison. Inside Levi's fractured mind, memories that weren't his own flooded through him, experiences of alternate Levis who had encountered Sukuna across the multiverse. A laboratory in ruins, equipment shattered, papers scattered across blood-soaked floors. Sukuna standing amid the destruction, holding aloft the severed head of Angstrom Levi, for eyes gleaming with amusement. You thought to study me? The demon laughed in the memory. To categorize me? I am beyond your comprehension, little scientist. No, Levi moaned, his body convulsing. A suburban home, once peaceful, now a charnel house. Sukuna seated at the dining table, consuming human flesh with deliberate appreciation while an alternate Levi, bound and forced to watch, screams as his family is devoured piece by piece. The love you hold for them seasons the meat, Sukuna observed in the memory, tearing flesh from bone with elegant precision. Your despair is the perfect accompaniment to their flavor. Stop please, Levi begged, tears streaming down his face. A young woman, a daughter he never had but an alternate Levi cherished, violated by the demon while her father watches, unable to look away, unable to help, unable to die despite his desperate pleas. This is the price of curiosity, Sukuna explained calmly in the memory. You sought to understand the king of curses. Now you understand. Everything you love belongs to me. Enough. Levi screamed, his voice cracking with the force of his desperation. The scientists jumped as the monitoring equipment suddenly malfunctioned, screens flickering with static before displaying incomprehensible data. What the hell? Wilson muttered, backing away from the window. I'm calling Stedman, Chen decided, reaching for her phone. This is beyond our clearance level. Look. Wilson pointed at Levi through the observation window. He's glowing. Inside the cell, Levi had gone eerily still, his eyes open but unseeing, fixed on the ceiling. His lips moved in a silent chant, words from a language that had no business being spoken by human tongues. Azarath Mitrian Zinthos, he whispered, his voice taking on a resonant quality that seemed to echo despite the room's soundproofing. Klatu Barada Nikto. Ash Nazg Derbachaluk. He didn't understand what he was saying, but something from deep within was guiding his tongue, and Levi in his desperation knew nothing but to follow it. I need to stop him, Levi muttered, his voice shifting between lucidity and madness. Before he becomes what I've seen. Before he does to this world what he's done to so many others. The green glow intensified, casting eerie shadows across the cell. The restraints holding Levi began to smoke, the metal heating to a dull red where it touched his skin. I need help, he realized, his fractured mind racing through possibilities. I need myself. With a sudden clarity that cut through his madness, Levi reached out with his dimensional awareness, something he had recently been able to consciously do, searching across the multiverse for a specific version of himself, one he had glimpsed before, one with resources, with power, with an army at his disposal. In another reality, another Angstrom Levi scarred, deformed, his brain partially exposed through a cracked skull paused in his plotting. This Levi had been gathering various versions of Invincible to execute his revenge against Mark Grayson, using them to destroy the hero's reputation. Times Square is in ruins, he asked, addressing the alternate Invincibles gathered in his warehouse headquarters. Yeah, it's dust, Mohawk Mark replied with a dismissive shrug, leaning against a support beam. Just like you wanted. Made a real show of it too, made sure plenty of cameras caught Invincible destroying public property. His costume was similar to the original Mark's, but with a spiked hairstyle and more aggressive design elements. His attitude matched his appearance, cocky, aggressive, with a perpetual sneer. "Don't act like you didn't enjoy it," Mustache Mark commented, cleaning blood from his gloves. This older, grizzled version with facial hair and battle scars had seen more combat than most of his counterparts. "You were laughing the whole time." "Of course I enjoyed it," Mohawk Mark shot back. "Doesn't mean I care about Levy's stupid revenge fantasy." "The hospital evacuation went perfectly too," Astronaut Mark reported, his costume modified with elements of space gear. More strategic than the others, he approached their arrangement with Levy as a military operation. Everyone saw Invincible endangering patients. The media's having a field day. "Good," the scarred Levy nodded, observing the chaos on multiple monitors. "And the mayor's office?" "Left enough evidence to frame the original for corruption," Sinister Mark replied. His costume darker with black accents where the original had blue, with a cape. His voice carried a permanent undertone of cruelty. "His reputation is being systematically destroyed, just as you promised would happen." "And once it is," Viltrumite Mark added, a version who had embraced his alien heritage more fully, with a costume incorporating elements of Viltrumite battle armor, "you'll hold up your end of the bargain? Access to the realities we each requested." "That was our deal," Levy confirmed, his attention still on the monitors. "You helped me destroy Mark Grayson's life, and I'll dash." He stopped abruptly, a strange sensation washing over him. "What is this?" the scarred Levy murmured, feeling an intrusion into his consciousness. "Who dares?" "Something wrong, brain case?" Mohawk Mark asked with mock concern. "Having another episode?" Silence. Levy snapped, concentrating on the mental intrusion. "Or what?" Sinister Mark challenged, stepping forward. "You'll send us home? Good luck finding more willing pawns for your pathetic revenge scheme." "I said silence," Levy repeated, his exposed brain beginning to glow green. "Someone is contacting me. Another version of myself." The assembled Invincibles exchanged glances, unnerved by the green glow but not particularly concerned for Levy himself. "Great, another you," Mustache Mark grumbled. "Because one wasn't annoying enough. Is this going to delay our payment?" Viltrumite Mark demanded, his eyes narrowing. "I have a worlds to conquer back home. The only reason I am here is because this opens up the potential for even more. And I have a Cecil Stedman to kill," Sinister Mark added. "Everyone shut up and let him concentrate," Astronaut Mark ordered, his tactical mind recognizing the potential significance. This could be important. Levy ignored them all, focusing on the mental contact. "Who are you?" he demanded silently. "What do you want?" "Help me," a voice projected across the dimensional barrier. "Our worlds are in danger. Sukuna has awakened." "Sukuna?" Levy muttered aloud, sorting through his vast knowledge of the multiverse. "I know no such being." "The King of Curses," the imprisoned Levy explained, his mental voice tinged with desperation. "A demon from ancient Japan who devours worlds. He exists across multiple dimensions, always different yet always the same. Always hungry. Always cruel. And why should I care about your problem?" the scarred Levy demanded. "I have my own vengeance to complete." "He's talking to himself again," Mohawk Mark stage whispered to the others. "Just what we need, our meal ticket going even more insane." "Shut up," Astronaut Mark hissed. "Whatever's happening, it's affecting his powers. Look at his head." Indeed, the scarred Levy's exposed brain was now pulsing with green energy, the same color that had characterized his dimensional powers before his injury. "Because if he isn't stopped, there will be no vengeance for either of us," the imprisoned Levy insisted. "No worlds left to conquer. Nothing but ash and bone," and his laughter echoing across the void. "This Sukuna," Levy said aloud, "what exactly is he capable of?" "Who the hell is Sukuna?" Sinister Mark demanded. "Are you making deals with other dimensions now?" I think another version of him is warning him about some kind of threat, astronaut Mark explained, watching Levy carefully. Some kind of enemy. Great, Viltrumite Mark sneered. Just what we need. More complications. Show me, Levy commanded his alternate self. Show me this threat. The imprisoned Levy opened his mind fully, sharing the horrific visions that had plagued him for weeks. The destruction, the death, the casual cruelty of a being who viewed humans as nothing more than toys to be broken or food to be consumed. The scarred Levy recoiled physically, staggering back against his control console as the images flooded his mind. What's happening to him? Mustache Mark asked, not out of concern but pragmatic self-interest. If he dies, how do we get back to our worlds? He's not dying, astronaut Mark observed. He's receiving information. Psychically, it seems. This is beyond anything I've encountered, Levy gasped, addressing the Invincibles. A being of immense power. A destroyer of worlds. Sounds like our kind of challenge, Mohawk Mark said with a grin. Point us at him. We'll take care of it. For the right price, of course. It's not that simple, Levy replied, sweat beading on his malformed brow. This entity, this Sukuna, he exists across multiple realities. And now he's fully manifested in my counterpart's world. Yes, the imprisoned Levy pleaded. Free me first, then together we can direct your Invincibles against Sukuna. Before he grows too powerful to stop. The scarred Levy hesitated, sensing something off about this request. You're not telling me everything, he accused aloud. What aren't you saying? He's definitely losing it, Sinister Mark said to the others. Maybe we should consider finding another dimensional traveler to get us home. Good luck with that, Viltrumite Mark replied dryly. They don't exactly grow on trees. We need him functional, astronaut Mark insisted. At least until he fulfills his end of our bargain. In his cell, the imprisoned Levy's expression twisted with frustration. The restraints around his wrists and ankles had begun to melt, the metal dripping onto the floor in glowing pools. There's no time, he shouted aloud. He's fully awakened now. We must act immediately. Outside the cell, alarms began to blare as the facility's sensors detected the rising energy levels. We need to evacuate, Chin insisted, grabbing Wilson's arm. Whatever's happening in there, it's beyond our control now. But the data, Wilson protested. Screw the data. Chin snapped, dragging him toward the exit. I'm not dying for Stedman's obsession with this guy. Inside the cell, Levy's body had begun to levitate several inches above the examination table, the last of his restraints giving way as the metal melted completely. If you won't help willingly, he snarled, addressing his alternate self across the dimensional divide, then I'll take control by force. In his headquarters, the scarred Levy staggered as he felt a foreign consciousness attempting to seize control of his mind, his powers, his carefully gathered army of alternate Invincibles. You dare, he growled, fighting back against the intrusion. You would steal from yourself? I would save everyone. The imprisoned Levy countered, pushing harder. Even if it means sacrificing you. What's happening to him now? Mustache Mark demanded, watching as Levy clutched his exposed brain, green energy pulsing more intensely. Looks like a psychic attack, astronaut Mark assessed. Another version of him is trying to take control. Of what? Him. Mohawk Mark scoffed. They can have him. No, you idiot, Viltrumite Mark growled. Of his powers. Of us. Of everything. Sinister Mark's eyes narrowed. Nobody controls me. Not Levy, not some other Levy, not anyone. He's trying to take control of my powers, Levy gasped, confirming Viltrumite Mark's assessment. Of all of you. Like hell he is, Mohawk Mark snarled, stepping forward aggressively. We're not anyone's puppets. Who is this other you? Astronaut Mark demanded, his tactical mind seeking information. What does he want with us? He's from a dimension where this Sukuna exists, Levy explained, still fighting the mental battle. He wants to use you, To fight it. A real fight instead of this reputation-destroying nonsense? Sinister Mark considered, a cruel smile spreading across his face. That actually sounds more interesting. No. Levy's voice rose in panic. He's hiding something. This isn't just about fighting some demon. There's more he isn't telling me. When is there not? Viltrumite Mark replied dismissively. You dimensional travelers are all the same. Always with your schemes and half-truths. Maybe we should hear what this other Levy has to offer, Mustache Mark suggested pragmatically. Might be a better deal than what we've got here. You would betray our arrangement? Levy demanded, still struggling against the mental invasion. Betray implies loyalty, Astronaut Mark pointed out coldly. We have a business arrangement, nothing more. If your counterpart offers better terms. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Levy shouted, blood now trickling from his eyes and ears as he fought the mental battle. This entity, this Sukuna, he's beyond anything you've faced before. We've heard that before, Mohawk Mark yawned theatrically. Everyone thinks their big bad is the biggest and baddest, when we're the baddest of them all. The two versions of Angstrom Levy, connected across dimensional barriers, engaged in a mental battle for supremacy. Their consciousnesses intertwined, memories flooding between them, powers merging and separating in chaotic pulses. In the GDA cell, Levy's body began to rotate slowly in midair, the green glow surrounding him intensifying until the observation window cracked from the pressure. Evacuate the building, a security officer shouted over the intercom. Unknown dimensional event in progress. This is not a drill. Scientists and agents fled through the corridors as the facility began to shake, structural supports groaning under dimensional stresses they were never designed to withstand. Meanwhile, across the multiverse, other entities began to notice the disturbance. The barriers between realities, normally solid and impermeable, were thinning as the two levies fought for control. In a ruined Tokyo, standing amid the devastation of what had once been Shibuya, a figure paused in his slaughter. Ryaman Sukuna, possessing the body of Yuji Itadori, but with 15 of his 20 fingers consumed, tilted his head as if listening to a distant sound. Interesting, he murmured, his split pupil eyes narrowing as he perceived a rift forming in reality itself. A door opening where no door should be. Around him, the remains of Shibuya smoldered, buildings collapsed, streets cratered, bodies strewn across the landscape. The strongest sorcerers of the modern era had tried to stop him and failed. Only Fushiguro had escaped, taking the remaining fingers with him. How convenient, Sukuna remarked, observing the dimensional rift that had appeared before him. I was just wondering where my next entertainment might come from. He approached the rift, cursed energy swirling around him as he examined the phenomenon. Through the distortion, he could see glimpses of another world, a modern city, not unlike Tokyo, but different in subtle ways. A new playground, he decided, a cruel smile spreading across Yuji's face, twisted by Sukuna's control. How thoughtful of someone to provide it. Without hesitation, he stepped toward the dimensional anomaly, drawn by instinct and curiosity, as well as a feeling that this will aid him to control the brat more thoroughly somehow. In another reality, in ancient Japan during the Heian era, a different Sukuna, this one in his original body, four-armed and marked with patterns that signified his divine lineage, paused in the act of consuming a defeated sorcerer's heart. A summoning? He wondered aloud, dropping the partially eaten organ as he sensed the dimensional disturbance. No, something more interesting. His court of terrified subjects prostrated themselves as he rose from his throne of human bones, cursed energy swirling around him like a crimson aura. My lord, a brave courtier ventured, forehead pressed to the blood-soaked floor. What troubles you? Nothing troubles the king of curses, Sukuna replied, his four eyes fixed on the rift that had appeared in his throne room. But something intrigues me. He approached the dimensional tear, studying the images visible through it, a modern world, with strange structures of glass and steel, machines that moved without horses, people dressed in unfamiliar garments. A new realm to conquer, he mused, a smile spreading across his face. How delightful. Great lord, the courtier pleaded, the conquest of our own land is not yet complete. The northern sorcerers still resist your divine rule." Sukuna turned, fixing the man with a cold stare. "Are you presuming to advise me?" "And no divine one," the courtier stammered, pressing himself flatter against the floor. "Merely observing." "Then observe this," Sukuna replied, gesturing casually. The man's body erupted in blood as invisible cutting forces sliced him into perfect cubes of flesh and bone. The consequence of wasting my time with obvious statements. He turned back to the rift, his interest rekindled. "A new world," he repeated. "And something familiar waiting there. How curious." Without further hesitation, he stepped through the dimensional tear, leaving his court in stunned silence. And in yet another reality, in modern Tokyo, a third Sukuna stood over the broken body of Satoru Gojo, the most powerful sorcerer of the modern era. Victory was his at last. His rivalry with the Six Eyes Bearer finally concluded. Was that all? Sukuna asked the corpse at his feet, disappointment evident in his tone. "After all that talk, all that anticipation, this is how our battle ends? With you broken and me unsatisfied." He kicked Gojo's body, sending it rolling across the destroyed landscape of what had once been Tokyo Jujutsu High. The school was now nothing but rubble, the barrier that had protected it for generations shattered by their battle. What now, he mused, sensing the dimensional rift forming nearby. Another challenger so soon? Or something more entertaining? He approached the tear in reality, curious despite his post-victory melancholy. Through it, he could see another world similar to his own in some ways, yet different in others. A parallel reality, he observed, his interest growing. How fascinating. And there's something there, something like me yet not me. The prospect of meeting another version of himself, perhaps one who might provide a greater challenge than Gojo had ultimately offered, was too intriguing to resist. This has potential, he decided, stepping toward the rift. At the very least, it should relieve my boredom. Back in the headquarters of the Scarred Levy, the mental battle had reached its climax. Both versions of Angstrom Levy were exhausted, their powers strained to the breaking point as they fought for control. "Stop this madness," the Scarred Levy shouted, blood trickling from his nose and ears. "You're tearing apart the multiverse itself. Better that than allowing Sukuna to devour it world by world." The imprisoned Levy countered. Look what's happening because of your resistance." Through their shared consciousness, both Levies became aware of the consequences of their struggle. The dimensional barriers were failing, not just between their two worlds, but across multiple realities. And through those failing barriers, things were beginning to move. "Something's happening to the monitors," Astronaut Mark announced, pointing at the screens that had been showing their various destructive activities across cities. The images were now distorting, showing strange green rifts opening in the sky. "What the hell is that?" Mohawk Mark demanded, leaning closer to one of the screens. "Are those portals?" "Not just portals," Viltrumite Mark observed, his enhanced vision allowing him to see details the others missed. "Something's coming through them. Multiple somethings." "This is your fault," Sinister Mark accused Levy. "You and your dimensional meddling." "Not just his fault," Mustache Mark corrected, watching the dimensional energy surrounding Levy grow more chaotic. "Looks like both versions of him are causing this. Fighting each other instead of working together." "Typical," Viltrumite Mark sneered. "Self-destruction through self-obsession." "What have you done?" the Scarred Levy whispered in horror, addressing his alternate self. In his cell, the imprisoned Levy began to laugh, the sound high and broken. "Not just me. Us. We've done this together. We've opened the way." The green glow surrounding him expanded explosively, shattering the reinforced walls of his cell and spreading throughout the GDA facility. Scientists, agents, and security personnel fled in terror as the building itself began to warp and twist under the influence of dimensional energies. And soon it poured through all and engulfed the worlds. The war begins. The war of Invincibles and Kings. The imperial throne room of Viltrum stood silent and imposing, its vast marble expanse designed to humble even the mightiest warriors who entered its hallowed space. Grand Regent Thrag sat upon the massive throne, his muscular form draped in the traditional red cape of Viltrumite leadership, his expression as impassive as carved stone. The silence was broken by the sound of footsteps, confident, measured, familiar. Too familiar. Thrag's eyes narrowed as he observed the figure approaching across the polished floor. The newcomer was identical to himself in every physical aspect. The same impressive height, the same powerful build, the same regal bearing that commanded respect and fear in equal measure. The same face that had overseen the execution of thousands who had failed the Viltrumite Empire. The doppelganger stopped at the base of the throne's dais, standing tall but not challenging. There was no need for introductions or explanations. Both beings understood the situation with a clarity that came from being the most tactically brilliant mind in the known universe. "You are me," Throne Thrag stated, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. It wasn't a question. "And you are me," the standing Thrag confirmed, his identical voice carrying the same authoritative tone. "From another timeline. Another universe." Throne Thrag's fingers tightened imperceptibly on the armrests of his seat. The only outward sign of his inner tension. The dimensional barriers have collapsed. Our realities have merged. Temporarily, Standing Thrag added, his analytical mind already processing the implications. Such mergers cannot sustain themselves naturally. The universes will either separate again, or perhaps one will consume the other, Throne Thrag finished, creating a singular reality where only one version of each entity can exist. A moment of silence passed between them as both considered the ancient legends, stories passed down through Viltrumite history of beings who traverse dimensions, consuming their alternate selves to gain power beyond measure. "The old texts speak of demons and spirits," Standing Thrag said, his eyes never leaving his counterparts. Entities that could devour the flesh and souls of their duplicates across realities, gaining not just additional strength, but multiplied power, Throne Thrag nodded. Their essence combining, rather than merely adding together. Another silence, heavier than the first. "We have always avoided such methods," Standing Thrag observed. "An unspoken agreement across the realities. The risk of failure would leave our respective empires vulnerable," Throne Thrag agreed. "And the practical challenges of ruling across dimensional barriers made the prospect inefficient. But circumstances have changed," Standing Thrag noted, his voice taking on a subtle edge. "The barriers fell without our intervention. The opportunity has presented itself without the associated risks." Throne Thrag's grip tightened further on his throne, the sound of cracking marble filling the chamber as his fingers crushed the ornate armrest to powder. "I assume you already understand how this will end," he said, rising to his full height, his cape billowing behind him. "Only one Thrag can rule. Only one empire can exist. Only one universe will remain when this is done," Standing Thrag agreed, his muscles tensing in preparation. No more words were necessary. Two identical minds had reached the same conclusion simultaneously, as they always had, as they always would. They moved with a blinding speed that had made Thrag legendary among even Viltrumites, covering the distance between them in a fraction of a second. Their fists connected with catastrophic force, the impact generating a shockwave that shattered the throne room's massive windows and cracked its ancient columns. The battle for the title of Emperor of the Universe had begun. The green light faded gradually, revealing a changed landscape. Where once had been the devastated remains of a business district, now stood an intact cityscape, similar but subtly different, as if someone had rebuilt everything with slight variations from the original design. Sukuna was the first to recover, his four eyes blinking as they adjusted to the altered reality. "What happened?" Mark groaned, pushing himself up from the ground where he'd fallen during the dimensional shift. "Where are we?" "Not where," Sukuna corrected, his enhanced senses already analyzing their surroundings. "When? Or rather, which?" Eve stood beside him, her own transformed body still radiating pink energy as she scanned their environment at the molecular level. "The dimensional structure has been compromised," she reported, her scientific mind immediately focusing on the problem. "We're experiencing a reality merger." "A what?" Mark asked, helping Arama to her feet. The ice manipulator seemed disoriented but unharmed. Multiple universes collapsing into one another, Eve explained, her eyes glowing as she continued her analysis. Similar to parallel dimensions, but with slight variations in events, decisions, outcomes. So this is still our city? Mark questioned, looking around at the unfamiliar yet familiar landscape. Yes and no, Sukuna replied, his forearms flexing experimentally to ensure his powers remained intact. It's the same city, but from a different timeline. One where our battle with Battle Beast either never happened or happened differently. That's not possible, Mark said, shaking his head in disbelief. Look, I've watched enough sci-fi movies and anime and read enough manga to at least think about dimensional travel being real, sure, but merging entire universes? And yet here we are, Sukuna observed dryly. The evidence suggests otherwise. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching flight, the distinctive whoosh of someone moving at superhuman speed through the air. All four turned to face the newcomer, instinctively forming a defensive formation. Two figures descended from the sky, one in a familiar black and blue costume, the other radiating pink energy. Mark and Eve, but not their Mark and Eve. Another one! The descending Mark shouted, his expression hardening as he accelerated toward them. Levy's getting desperate if he's sending them in groups now. Before anyone could respond, this alternate Mark slammed into their Mark with devastating force, sending both crashing through a nearby building. Mark. Eve, our Eve, cried out, her powers flaring in response to the threat. The alternate Eve hovered above, her hands already glowing with molecular energy. I don't know what game Levy's playing, she called down, but it ends now. Sukuna stepped forward, his four eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. We are not your enemies, he stated, his voice carrying that unmistakable authority. There has been a dimensional merger. We are from another reality. Yeah, right, alternate Eve scoffed, unleashing a blast of pink energy. That's exactly what the last batch of duplicates said before they started killing civilians. Sukuna deflected the energy blast with a casual wave of cursed energy, his patience visibly thinning. Enough. This misunderstanding is becoming tedious. Inside the damaged building, the two Marks grappled with each other, evenly matched in strength and speed. They crashed through walls and support beams, bringing down chunks of ceiling around them. I don't know what Levy told you, alternate Mark growled, landing a solid punch to his counterpart's jaw, but I'm not letting you ruin my life. I don't even know who Levy is, our Mark shouted back, retaliating with a kick that sent his doppelganger flying backward. We were fighting Battle Beast when everything went green. Outside, the situation was escalating as alternate Eve attempted to restrain Arama with molecular bonds, only to find her constructs shattered by precise applications of ice. Sukuna-sama, Arama called, her voice calm despite the chaos. Shall I neutralize this opponent? No, Sukuna replied, watching the aerial battle with calculated interest. They are not our enemies. Merely confused. Our Eve had taken to the air, engaging her counterpart in a dazzling display of pink energy that lit up the sky like fireworks. The two molecular manipulators circled each other, testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. You're good, alternate Eve admitted, creating a shield to block an energy pulse. This is new though, with Angstrom sending duplicates of me as well. I don't know who this Angstrom is, but I'm not working for anyone, our Eve retorted, her enhanced powers allowing for more complex molecular manipulations than her counterpart had ever displayed. I'm simply you from another reality. A better reality, apparently. The two Marks burst from the building, still locked in combat, their costumes torn and bloodied from their exchange. Enough. Sukuna's voice thundered across the battlefield, carrying enough power to momentarily freeze everyone in place. Cursed energy radiated from him in palpable waves, his four eyes glowing with inner light. This pointless conflict solves nothing, he continued, his tone brooking no argument. We are not working for whoever your enemy is. We are versions of yourselves from another timeline, brought here by whatever caused the dimensional merger. Alternate Mark hovered cautiously, blood trickling from a split lip. How do we know you're not just another of Levy's tricks? He's been sending alternate versions of me to destroy my reputation for weeks now. Because we have no idea who this Levy person is, their Mark replied, wiping blood from his nose. We were in the middle of a battle with an alien warrior named Battle Beast when everything went green. Next thing we knew, we were here. Battle Beast. Alternate Mark's expression shifted from hostility to confusion. The alien gladiator who worked for Machine Head? He is more than that. At least he was in our world more than that. Don't really know about yours, their Mark said. He nearly killed me before Megumi stepped in. Alternate Eve descended slowly, her powers still at the ready, but her aggression diminished. And who exactly is Megumi? This four-armed guy, I'm guessing. Sukuna inclined his head slightly. I am Megumi Fushiguro. Also known as Sukuna, one people call hero in this world. That doesn't explain why we should trust you, Alternate Mark said, though his stance had relaxed somewhat. We've been dealing with dimensional incursions for days now. All of them hostile. If we were working for your enemy, Sukuna observed calmly, we would have continued the attack rather than attempting to explain ourselves. Logic suggests we are telling the truth. Our Eve drifted closer to Sukuna, her body radiating pink energy. Look, I understand your caution. But we're as confused as you are about what's happening. We just want to figure this out and return things to how they're supposed to be. Alternate Eve studied our Eve, noting the differences in her appearance and energy signature. You're different from me. Enhanced somehow. Recent development, their Eve replied with a small smile. Evolutionary adaptation, you might say. Alternate Mark and Eve exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Fine, Alternate Mark said finally. Let's say we believe you're not working with Levy. We still need to figure out what happened and how to fix this dimensional merger, you called it. Perhaps we should continue this discussion somewhere more secure, Nolan suggested, descending from above. The Global Defense Agency might have resources to help us understand what's happening. The Guardians will also be useful. Dad. Alternate Mark called out in shock, his body tensing as he hovered in midair. Beside him, Alternate Eve immediately shifted into a combat stance, pink energy flaring around her. You're working with Omni-Man? Alternate Eve demanded, her voice tight with anger and fear. He's supposed to be off-world. Nolan raised an eyebrow, noting their hostile reaction. Interesting. My relationship with you appears to differ significantly in your reality. Differ? You tried to kill me. Alternate Mark shouted as he realized this one wasn't his father, though still too frustrated to not vent, his fists clenching. You murdered the Guardians of the Globe. Our Mark's expression fell, his tone becoming somber. Oh, so Megumi didn't stop Dad in your world. Stop him? Also, back up, I know he introduced himself, but that was too short. So, again, who the hell is Megumi? And how could he possibly stop him? Alternate Mark demanded, pointing at Nolan. His father beat him to near death. To him, his father when not holding back was an unstoppable force of destruction. Our Mark pointed with his thumb to Sukuna. He's my best friend. In our world, he confronted my dad in the Flaxen dimension and, well, changed things. Prevented a whole lot of murder and mayhem. Alternate Mark stared at Sukuna with disbelief. You stopped Omni-Man? How is that even possible? It's a long story, Sukuna replied simply, his four eyes surveying the cityscape. One better told in a secure location. The Global Defense Agency would be the logical choice, as Nolan suggested. Alternate Mark hesitated, exchanging another glance with his Eve. The GDA isn't exactly friendly territory for me right now. Cecil and I aren't on good terms. Like, restraining order not good terms. Nevertheless, they have resources we need, Nolan stated. And if dimensional barriers are collapsing, we need all the help we can get. After a moment of tense silence, Alternate Mark nodded reluctantly. Fine. But I'm watching you, he added, pointing at Nolan. All of you. The group took to the air, flying toward the GDA headquarters visible in the distance. As they flew, our Eve drifted closer to Alternate Eve, studying her with scientific curiosity that bordered on uncomfortable staring. So, our Eve asked suddenly, "Are you single?" Alternate Eve nearly dropped altitude in surprise, her concentration breaking momentarily. "What? Why would you ask that?" "Just curious about differences between our timelines," our Eve replied with a too casual shrug that fooled absolutely no one. No, I'm not single," Alternate Eve answered, confusion evident in her voice. "Mark and I are together." Our Eve's face lit up with a smile that was just a little too bright, like someone had replaced her normal expression with a 1,000-watt bulb. "Oh, that's wonderful." Our Mark, overhearing the exchange, shook his head with a small smile. "Your Yandra side is showing, Eve." "My what?" our Eve asked, at the exact same moment that Alternate Eve and Alternate Mark both exclaimed, "Her what?" "You know," our Mark explained, gesturing dramatically, "the whole "I will track your molecular signature across time and space" thing. I've catalogued every breath you've taken for the last 6 months obsession. If anyone else looks at you will rearrange their atoms into a modern art installation, possessiveness towards Megumi. That whole deal." Our Eve's smile turned dangerous, though it never left her face. "Mark, if you don't shut up right now, I'll molecularly rearrange your vocal cords into a pretty bow tie. Then I'll use them to tie your shoelaces together while you're flying." "Megumi?" Alternate Eve asked, looking between our Eve and Sukuna with wide eyes. "You're with him? The four-armed guy with the extra set of eyes who looks like he stepped out of a horror movie." "Eve and I are in a relationship," Sukuna confirmed, a recent development, but a significant one. Our Mark raised his hands in a defensive position, though his smile remained. "Hey, I think it's great. Terrifying, but great. Like watching a volcano erupt from a safe distance. Except there is no safe distance." "I'm not terrifying," our Eve protested, though her eyes glowed slightly brighter with the statement, making her look like a pink lighthouse beacon. "You literally threatened to destroy the universe when you thought he died," our Mark pointed out. "You were going to unmake reality because you were sad. That's not normal breakup behavior. That's not even normal my goldfish died behavior." "That was an emotional moment," our Eve defended, pink energy flaring briefly around her like an agitated aura. "Besides, he's fine now. Better than fine, magnificent really," she added, her gaze softening as it landed on Sukuna's transformed form, a look that somehow managed to be both adorable and deeply unsettling. Alternate Mark and Eve exchanged bewildered glances, clearly struggling to process this strange dynamic from their counterparts. "Your world is different," Alternate Mark finally said, the understatement hanging in the air like a lead balloon as they approached the GDA headquarters. "Different is one word for it," Alternate Eve muttered. "Completely insane is another."
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.